19-year-old Lena Hayes stood in a marble palazzo in Rome, staring at a stranger 3 times her age while her father signed papers that sold her like livestock. The debt was $8 million. The payment was her. Vincenzo De Luca, crime lord, collector of debts, architect of empires, watched her with the patience of a man who'd already won. She had no passport, no money, no way home. Just a ring being slid onto her finger and the sudden crushing realization that everything she thought she knew about her father had been a lie. If you want to see how Lena survives this nightmare and what happens when a captive stops being afraid, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The flight to Rome had been Lena's first time leaving the United States. 24 hours ago, she'd been working double shifts at a diner in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, saving for community college, and trying not to think about how her father's construction business was circling the drain. Then he'd called, voice tight, words careful, and said he needed her help closing a deal. An investor in Italy, someone who could save everything. "It's just paperwork, sweetheart," he'd said. "You sign a few documents, smile pretty, and we're back in business." She'd wanted to believe him. Now she stood in the center of a room that cost more than her childhood home, surrounded by marble columns and frescoes that belonged in a museum, while men in expensive suits conducted a transaction she didn't understand. The palazzo sat on a hill overlooking Rome, all ancient stone and modern money. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a postcard. Lena had noticed none of it during the car ride from the airport. Her father had been silent, sweating through his shirt despite the air conditioning, checking his phone every 30 seconds. "Dad?" She'd tried twice. "What kind of investor lives in a place like this?" "The successful kind." His voice had cracked on the last word. Now they were here, in this room, with him. Vincenzo De Luca sat behind a desk carved from dark wood that looked older than America. Late 50s, maybe 60. Silver threaded through black hair slicked back from a face that might have been handsome before time, and violence had carved it into something harder. He wore a charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it looked like armor. His hands were folded on the desk, broad, scarred knuckles, a gold signet ring on his right hand. He hadn't looked at Lena yet. "Mr. Hayes." Vincenzo's English was flawless, accent minimal. "You understand the terms?" Her father nodded too quickly. "Yes. Yes, I understand. Then we proceed." A man Lena hadn't noticed, younger, maybe 30, with the build of someone who hurt people professionally, stepped forward and placed a leather folder on the desk. Vincenzo opened it with the casual precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Wait." Lena's voice cut through the tension. "What terms? What are we signing?" Her father flinched. "Lena, just..." "Mr. Hayes borrowed $8 million from me." Vincenzo's gaze finally shifted to her. His eyes were dark brown, almost black, and utterly empty of warmth. "He invested it poorly. The debt has matured." $8 million. The number hit her like cold water. "That's..." She looked at her father. "That's not possible. Your business was struggling, but $8 million? It was supposed to work." Her father's hands shook. "The development deal, the contracts, it was all supposed to, It didn't." Vincenzo's interruption was soft, final. "And now the debt must be settled." Lena's heart hammered. "We don't have $8 million. We don't have $8,000. "I'm aware." Vincenzo pulled a single sheet of paper from the folder. "Which is why your father has proposed an alternative arrangement." The room tilted. "What arrangement?" Her voice barely worked. Vincenzo slid the paper across the desk. "Marriage." The word hung in the air like smoke. Lena stared at the document, Italian and English side by side, dense legal text she couldn't process, and then at her father. "Tell me this is a joke." Her father couldn't meet her eyes. "Lena, I didn't have a choice." "You sold me?" The scream tore out of her. "To pay off your debt, you sold me?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" She grabbed the paper, hands shaking so hard the text blurred. "This is a marriage contract. To him." She pointed at Vincenzo, who watched the scene unfold with the detached interest of someone observing a biology experiment. He's older than you. Age is irrelevant. Vincenzo's voice cut through her panic. Your father owes me $8 million. He cannot pay. You are his only asset of value. Asset. The word made her stomach turn. This is insane. She backed toward the door. This is illegal. You can't just... People don't do this anymore. People do exactly this. Vincenzo stood. He was taller than she'd realize, 6'2" or 6'3", with the kind of presence that made the room feel smaller. Debts are paid one way or another. I'll call the police. With what phone? He gestured to the bodyguard who held up her cell. She hadn't even felt him take it. And tell them what? That you came to Italy voluntarily? That your father signed legal documents transferring guardianship rights? Guardianship. I'm 19. In Italy, you're a minor until 21, without parental authorization for certain contracts. His smile was thin, cold. Your father has been very cooperative in providing that authorization. She turned to her father, desperate. You can't do this. Dad, please. I'm sorry. His voice broke. But if I don't pay him back, they'll kill me. They'll kill me, Lena. So you gave him me instead. It's not forever. He was crying now, pathetic. Just until the debt is worked off. A few years, maybe. A few years. Vincenzo's patience evaporated. Enough. The word cracked like a whip. Mr. Hayes, you've completed your obligation. Marco will escort you to the car. Wait. Her father reached for her. Don't touch me. Lena's voice was ice. Don't you ever touch me again. Marco, the bodyguard, grabbed her father by the elbow. Come, signore. Lena, I'm sorry. I'm so... The door closed behind them. The sound was final as a coffin lid. Silence flooded the room. Lena stood frozen, brain screaming at her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Vincenzo returned to his desk, calm as if nothing had happened. Sit. No. It wasn't a request. I don't care. Her voice shook, but she held her ground. You can't make me marry you. I don't care what papers my father signed. This is human trafficking. Human trafficking requires force or fraud. Vincenzo pulled out a second folder. You came here willingly. Your father signed custody transfer documents. In 3 days, we will marry in a private ceremony. All legal, all documented. I'll run. To where? He opened the folder, revealing her passport. You have no money, no Italian, no friends in this country. Rome is not a kind city to young American girls with nowhere to go. The truth of it crushed her. Why? The question came out broken. Why me? You're rich. You're powerful. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. He studied her with clinical detachment. I want you. You don't even know me. I know enough. 19 years old. Associate degree from community college, delayed by working full-time to help your father's failing business. No mother. She left when you were 7. No siblings. No romantic attachments that lasted longer than 3 months. You're intelligent, healthy, and most importantly, he closed the folder. You're what your father offered to settle his debt. Lena's knees gave out. She caught herself on a chair, the room spinning. This can't be happening. Yet it is. Vincenzo's voice softened a fraction, though it still carried the warmth of steel. You have 2 choices, Lena. Marry me and live in comfort while your father's debt is forgiven. Or refuse, and I will collect what I'm owed through other means, starting with your father's life. You'd kill him? Without hesitation. She believed him. You're a monster. Yes. No denial, no justification, but I'm a monster who keeps his word. Marry me, and you'll be protected, provided for. You'll want for nothing. Except my freedom. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Freedom is overrated. Most people don't know what to do with it. And you do? I know exactly what to do with it. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Maria will show you to your room. We'll discuss the details of our arrangement tomorrow. I haven't agreed to anything. You agreed the moment you stepped off that plane. Fuck. He walked past her toward the door, pausing just close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and foreign. Your father made the choice for you. Now you simply have to decide whether you want him to survive it. The door opened. A woman in her 50s appeared, dressed simply but elegantly. Signorina Hayes, please come. Lena didn't move. Lena. Vincenzo's voice held a warning. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She wanted to fight, wanted to scream, break something, claw her way through these marble walls and run until her lungs gave out. But the rational part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive through her mother's abandonment and her father's failures, did the math. No money, no passport, no options. She followed Maria into the hallway. The room they gave her could have swallowed her entire apartment back home. Cream walls, antique furniture, a bed large enough for 4 people draped in silk that probably cost more than her car. French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking gardens she couldn't appreciate. It was beautiful. It was a prison. Maria set her single suitcase on a bench. The bathroom is through there. Dinner is at 8. You should rest. I'm not hungry. You will eat anyway. Maria's voice was kind but firm. Signor De Luca doesn't tolerate waste. Is that what I am? Lena's laugh was bitter. A thing he doesn't want to waste? Maria's expression softened. You're not the first girl to stand in this room and feel what you're feeling. The words hit like a punch. There were others? Not for many years. Maria moved toward the door. But yes, before. What happened to them? They learned to survive. Maria paused in the doorway. Some even learned to live. Which one you become is up to you. The door clicked shut. Lena stood in the center of that enormous room and finally let herself fall apart. She didn't go to dinner. No one came to force her. At 9, Maria knocked and left a tray outside the door. Pasta, bread, wine, fruit. Lena ignored it until midnight, then ate everything because spite wouldn't fill her stomach. She tried the balcony doors. Unlocked. 3 stories up, gardens below, walls surrounding the property. She could climb down, maybe. Break an ankle, probably. Then what? Run through Rome with no money and no Italian? The window was also unlocked. That's when she understood. He wasn't keeping her locked in. He was showing her that locks were unnecessary. Where could she go that he couldn't find her? She slept in her clothes on top of the covers and woke at dawn to someone knocking. Signorina, Maria's voice. Signor De Luca wishes to see you in the garden. Lena opened the door. Tell him to go to hell. I will do no such thing. Maria's eyes held steel beneath the kindness. You will shower, dress, and join him in 20 minutes. The clothes in the wardrobe will fit. I have my own. Those clothes are from your old life. Maria's voice dropped. You don't live that life anymore. The sooner you accept that, the easier this becomes. She left Lena standing there, the truth of those words sinking in like poison. The wardrobe held designer labels Lena recognized from magazine covers. Dresses, pants, blouses, all her size, all expensive. She grabbed jeans and a simple shirt out of spite, then caught sight of herself in the mirror, pale, hollow-eyed, hair tangled from a night spent crying into silk pillows. She looked like a victim. Something in her chest hardened. If she was going to survive this, and she would survive this, she couldn't look like prey. Lena showered, dressed in the clothes he'd provided because they fit better than armor, braided her hair because it gave her something to control, walked downstairs because staying in that room meant admitting defeat. The palazzo was a maze of corridors and rooms she didn't try to memorize. A young man in a suit, another bodyguard, waited at the base of the stairs and gestured for her to follow. They walked through the house in silence. Morning light poured through windows that framed Rome like paintings. The city sprawled below, ancient and indifferent to one girl's nightmare. The garden was a walled paradise. Roses, jasmine, stone fountains, gravel paths. Vincenzo sat at an iron table beneath an olive tree reading a newspaper. Coffee steamed in a cup beside him. He didn't look up. Sit. Lena remained standing. What do you want? I want you to sit and have breakfast. He turned a page. We have things to discuss. I don't want to discuss anything with you. Then listen. He folded the paper and finally looked at her. Morning light didn't soften him. If anything, it made the scars on his knuckles more visible, the hard lines of his face sharper. You're angry. That's reasonable. You feel betrayed by your father. Also reasonable. You want to fight me. Understandable, but pointless. Pointless? You can't win. He poured a second cup of coffee. I have money, power, and the law on my side. You have nothing but anger. Anger is useful, but only if directed properly. And you're going to teach me how to direct it? The sarcasm dripped. Yes. The simple answer threw her. Sit, Lena. His voice remained calm. Or stand there trembling with rage. Either way, we're having this conversation. She sat, not because he ordered it, but because her legs were shaking. Vincenzo pushed the coffee toward her. You're wondering what I want from you. You made that pretty clear. Did I? He leaned back. I told you I want to marry you. I didn't tell you why. Does it matter? It will. He studied her like she was a puzzle he was solving. I'm 58 years old. I've built an empire that spans 3 continents. I have wealth that will last generations. But empires need heirs. Wealth needs someone to inherit it. So find someone your own age and settle down. Women my age want different things. Partnership? Love? I'm not interested in love. Then why not hire a surrogate? Why trap some teenager? Because I don't want just an heir. I want a wife who understands what I've built. Someone I can shape. Someone young enough to learn, but old enough to survive the education. The words made her skin crawl. You want to mold me into some perfect mafia wife? There's nothing perfect about this life. His voice went hard. And if you think I'm going to parade you around like a trophy, you're wrong. What I want is someone who can stand beside me and not break. Someone who can learn to navigate this world without getting killed. Why would I want to learn that? Because the alternative is being weak, and weak things don't survive in my world. He sipped his coffee. Your father was weak. He borrowed money he couldn't repay, made promises he couldn't keep, and when the debt came due, he sold his daughter to save his own skin. You can hate me for taking his offer, but hate him more for making it. Lena's hands clenched around the coffee cup. I hate you both. Good. Use that. Vincenzo's eyes held hers. I'm not asking you to love me, Lena. I'm not even asking you to like me. I'm asking you to be smart. You're trapped in a situation you didn't choose. You can spend the rest of your life crying about it, or you can learn to survive it. Maybe even turn it to your advantage. There's no advantage to being your prisoner. You're not my prisoner. You're my wife. We're not married yet. A technicality that will be resolved in 3 days. He set down his cup. Until then, I'm offering you a deal. Another deal? Her laugh was sharp, because the last one worked out so well. This one is simpler. I will teach you everything you need to survive in this world. Italian, so you're not helpless in your own home. Self-defense, so you're not dependent on bodyguards. The politics of my business, so you understand the dangers. In return, you stop fighting me long enough to learn. And if I refuse, then you'll remain ignorant, helpless, and dependent, which makes you a liability. And I don't keep liabilities. The threat was subtle, but clear. Lena stared at this man who'd bought her like furniture and was now offering to teach her how to survive the life he'd forced her into. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to fight, to resist. But Maria's words echoed. Some even learned to live. If I agree, she said slowly, you don't touch me, not until… She couldn't finish the sentence. Our wedding night? Vincenzo's smile was cold. I have no interest in forcing myself on a terrified child. When we consummate this marriage, you'll be willing, or we won't consummate it at all. You'd be okay with that? A marriage that's not even real? The marriage will be real enough for my purposes. Whether we share a bed is irrelevant to the legal and business benefits. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it made her feel like she'd failed some test she didn't know she was taking. So what happens now? Her voice was steadier than she felt. You teach me Italian and how to throw a punch, and I just… What? Play house? You learn, you adapt, you survive. He stood. Your first lesson starts in an hour. Carlo will take you to the training room. What kind of training? The kind that keeps you alive. He started toward the house, then paused. One more thing. Your father called this morning, wanted to speak with you. Lena's chest tightened. What did you tell him? That you're unavailable. He'll call again. They always do. Vincenzo's voice held something that might have been contempt. Eventually, you'll have to decide whether you want to speak to him, but not today. Today, you focus on staying alive long enough to make that choice. He left her sitting in the garden with cold coffee and the ruins of her life. The training room was a converted ballroom in the palazzo's east wing. Hardwood floors, mirrored walls, equipment that looked both expensive and brutal. Carlo, the bodyguard from earlier, was waiting. Early 30s, built like a boxer, with a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Signorina Hayes. His English was heavily accented. We begin with basics. You know how to make a fist? I'm not stupid. Show me. Lena made a fist. Carlo adjusted her thumb position. Like this. Thumb outside, or you break it when you hit. When I hit what? Whatever is trying to kill you. He moved to a heavy bag hanging from the ceiling. Signor De Luca says you need to defend yourself. So we teach you. For the next 2 hours, Carlo taught her how to stand, how to move, how to hit without breaking her own hand. He was patient but demanding, correcting her form over and over until her muscles screamed. Again. I can't. Again. She hit the bag until her knuckles bled, and Carlo finally called a break. You're weak, he said, tossing her a water bottle. But you learn fast, that's good. Good for what? For staying alive. He started wrapping her hands in clean bandages. This world Signor De Luca lives in, it's not kind, especially not to women. You need to be hard. I don't want to be hard. Then you will be dead. Carlo's voice held no malice, just fact. Better hard than dead. After training came Italian lessons with a tutor named Alessia, a woman in her 40s who spoke no English and expected Lena to keep up anyway. For 2 hours, Lena stumbled through basic phrases while Alessia corrected her pronunciation with the patience of someone who'd taught many unwilling students. Lunch was brought to her room. She ate alone, watching Rome through the window and trying not to think about the wedding 3 days away. Afternoon brought more Italian, then an hour with Maria learning the palazzo's layout and rules. Where she could go, where was forbidden, who to speak to, who to avoid. Signor De Luca's business associates come here often, Maria explained. You don't speak to them unless spoken to. You don't ask questions. You smile, you're polite, and you remember nothing. I'm supposed to just be decoration? You're supposed to survive. Maria's voice was sharp. These men are not like men you knew in America. They are dangerous. They will test you. And if you fail those tests, Signor De Luca can't protect you. Why would he want to? Because you're his wife, and what's his, he keeps. Maria smoothed her skirt. The wedding is Sunday. Tomorrow you'll be fitted for your dress. I don't want a dress. What you want stopped mattering the moment your father signed those papers. Maria's voice gentled. I know this is hard. But fighting the current only makes you drown faster. Learn to swim with it. And if I don't want to swim? Then you sink. Maria moved toward the door. Dinner's at 8. Don't be late. Dinner was the first time Lena saw Vincenzo again since morning. He sat at the head of a table long enough to seat 20, reading something on his phone while a staff member served the first course. Lena took the seat Maria indicated, 6 chairs down from Vincenzo, like a guest in her own prison. How was your first day? Vincenzo didn't look up from his phone. Enlightening. Carlo says you have potential. Alessia says you're stubborn. Both are useful traits. Glad I'm useful. You will be. He set down the phone. Tomorrow after your dress fitting, you'll join me for a business dinner. I want you to observe. Observe what? How this world works. He cut into his steak with surgical precision. The men I do business with aren't like your father. They're wolves. You need to learn how to move among them without being eaten. And you're going to protect me? I'm going to teach you how to protect yourself. He met her eyes. There's a difference. The meal continued in silence. Lena picked at her food, appetite gone, while Vincenzo ate with the calm efficiency of someone who'd long ago stopped caring about pleasure and focused only on function. Your father called again, he said as dessert arrived. 3 times. Lena's fork clattered against her plate. What does he want? To apologize? To explain? The usual things cowards say when guilt catches up to them. Vincenzo's voice held contempt. Do you want to speak with him? No. Eventually, you'll have to. Why? Because unfinished business rots. Better to face it and be done. He pushed back from the table. When you're ready, tell Maria. She'll arrange it. He left her alone in that enormous dining room with dessert she couldn't eat and questions she couldn't answer. Shy. That night, Lena dreamed of Iowa, of the diner where she'd worked, of the apartment she'd shared with her father, of a life that had been small and hard but hers. She woke to Roman sun streaming through unfamiliar windows and remembered that life was gone. The dress fitting was an exercise in humiliation. 3 women descended on her with measuring tapes and fabric swatches, speaking rapid Italian while Vincenzo watched from a chair in the corner. They stripped her down to her underwear and measured every inch while she stood there, exposed and furious. The dress they brought was ivory silk, simple and elegant. Beautiful, actually, which made it worse. Try it on. Vincenzo's voice was flat. No. It wasn't a request. I don't care. He stood, walked over, and spoke to the seamstresses in Italian. They left. The room emptied until it was just the 2 of them and that dress hanging between them like a surrender flag. You can put it on yourself, Vincenzo said quietly, or I can have Maria do it. But you will try on that dress, because in 2 days you will wear it while we sign papers that make this permanent. Fighting it now is pointless. Lena grabbed the dress, disappeared behind a screen, put it on with shaking hands because he was right, and she hated him for it. When she emerged, Vincenzo studied her with the same clinical detachment he'd shown since the beginning. It fits. He nodded to the seamstresses who'd returned. Make the final adjustments. That was it. No compliment, no emotion, just confirmation that she'd serve her purpose. I hate you, Lena whispered. I know. Vincenzo headed for the door. Get changed. We leave for dinner in an hour. The business dinner was held at a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a name, just a door in an ancient building that opened only for people like Vincenzo. They sat in a private room, Vincenzo, Lena, and 3 men who looked at her the way wolves looked at wounded deer, hungry, calculating, waiting for her to show weakness. Vincenzo introduced her as his fiancée. The men smiled. One kissed her hand too long. Another made a comment in Italian that made Vincenzo's jaw tighten. English, Giacomo, Vincenzo said softly. My fiancé is still learning Italian. Of course. Giacomo, 50s, expensive suit, dead eyes, smiled at Lena. I was just saying how fortunate you are. Vincenzo is very selective. The word dripped with implications. Dinner was 3 hours of conversations Lena barely followed. Business talk, territory discussions, mentions of names and places that meant nothing to her. She sat silent, watching, learning. These men were predators. Every gesture calculated, every word weighted. They tested Vincenzo constantly. Little challenges disguised as jokes, questions designed to reveal weaknesses. Vincenzo deflected them all with the ease of someone who'd been playing this game for decades. On the drive home, he finally spoke. What did you observe? That your friends are terrible. They're not friends. They're associates. What else? That you don't trust them. Good. Never trust anyone in this business. What else? That they were testing you. Through me. Vincenzo glanced at her, something like approval in his eyes. Very good. They wanted to see if you were weak, if you'd embarrass me, if I'd made a mistake taking someone so young. And you sat quiet, watched, and didn't give them ammunition. That's more than most would have done. He turned back to the window. You're learning. Shouldn't have felt like praise. But some broken part of Lena felt a flicker of pride anyway, and she hated herself for it. The wedding was Sunday morning. A priest came to the palazzo, probably paid enough not to ask questions. Maria helped Lena dress while she stood numb, going through motions that felt like a funeral. The ceremony was in the garden. Just Vincenzo, Lena, the priest, and 2 witnesses Lena didn't know. 15 minutes. Words in Italian and English. Rings. His gold. Hers a diamond so large it felt obscene. I do. The words came out flat, dead. Vincenzo slid the ring onto her finger. I do. The priest pronounced them married. Vincenzo kissed her, brief, clinical, meaningless. It was done. That night, Vincenzo knocked on her bedroom door. Lena opened it, heart hammering, wondering if he'd lied about waiting. I want to show you something, he said. He led her through the palazzo to a room she'd never seen. His office. Dark wood, leather furniture, walls lined with books in multiple languages. He opened a safe hidden behind a painting and pulled out a folder. Your father's debt. He handed it to her. Inside were the original loan documents, $8 million, her father's signature, and a second page, the contract selling her to Vincenzo. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to understand exactly what he did. Vincenzo took the papers to his desk and fed them into a shredder. And because that debt is now paid, Lena watched the documents disappear into confetti. Why? Because you're my wife now. The debt is settled. Your father gets to live, and you, he met her eyes, you get to decide who you want to become. I want to go home. This is your home. His voice wasn't cruel, just final. The sooner you accept that, the better. He left her standing in his office, surrounded by the shredded remains of the contract that had stolen her life. Lena walked back to her room, her prison, and finally understood. She wasn't getting out of this. There was no escape, no rescue, no going back. All she could do was survive, and maybe, somewhere in the surviving, figure out how to turn this cage into something she could live with. The next morning, when Carlo came for training, Lena hit the bag harder than before. When Alessia corrected her Italian, Lena repeated the phrases until they were perfect. When Vincenzo's associates came for dinner and tested her with loaded questions, Lena smiled and said nothing, learning their tells, memorizing their weaknesses. She was 19 years old. She'd been sold by her father and bought by a monster, but she was still breathing. And as long as she was breathing, she could learn. As long as she could learn, she could survive. And maybe, just maybe, she could become something more than a victim of a bargain she never made. 3 weeks into the marriage, Lena stopped flinching when Vincenzo entered her room. It wasn't trust, it was adaptation. The same way animals in captivity learn to tolerate their keepers, not out of affection, but survival instinct honed to a knife's edge. Her days had developed a rhythm that felt less like living and more like drilling for war. Carlo had her in the training room by 7 each morning, pushing her through exercises that left her muscles screaming and her hands wrapped in bandages more often than not. Then Italian with Alessia, who'd stopped speaking any English at all, forcing Lena to claw her way through conversations about weather and groceries, and eventually, politics. Again, Alessia said, tapping her pen against the textbook. How do you say, I don't trust him? Non mi fido di lui. And if it's a woman? Non mi fido di lei. Better. Alessia made a note. Now tell me, in Italian, why you would say this? Lena's brain stuttered, reaching for words she'd learned 2 days ago. Perché le sue parole non corrispondono alle sue azioni. Because her words don't match her actions. Alessia smiled, a rare thing. Excellent. You're thinking in Italian now, not translating. It was a small victory. Lena held onto those like lifelines. Afternoons were different each day. Sometimes Vincenzo took her to meetings where she sat silent and observed. Other times, Maria taught her the politics of the household, which staff members could be trusted, which ones reported directly to Vincenzo, how to read the temperature of a room before entering it. Signora De Luca. Maria had started using the title after the wedding, and each time it landed like a slap. When you walk into the business dinner, what's the first thing you look for? They were in the library, afternoon sun cutting through windows that overlooked the gardens. Lena had started spending time here between lessons, surrounded by books in languages she was slowly learning to read. The exits, Lena answered. Good. What else? Who's carrying weapons? Who defers to whom? Where Vincenzo sits in relation to everyone else. And why does his position matter? Because it tells me who he considers a threat. Lena closed the book she'd been pretending to read. If he sits with his back to the wall, he doesn't trust the room. If he sits casually, he's already won whatever game they're playing. Maria's expression softened with something that might have been approval. You learn quickly. I don't have a choice. We always have choices. Maria moved to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. I was 23 when I came to work for Signor De Luca. My husband had just been killed. Business dispute, they said. Left me with 2 children and no money. Vincenzo gave me a job, a home, protection for my sons. Lena had heard pieces of this before, but never the whole story. Why are you telling me this? Because you think you're the only one who's ever been trapped. Maria turned from the window. But we're all trapped by something. The question is what we do with our cage. Before Lena could respond, the library door opened. Vincenzo stood there, dressed for business, car keys in hand. We're going out, he said. Where? Lena stood, instinctively checking her appearance. 3 weeks, and she'd already learned that looking presentable wasn't vanity, it was armor. To see your father. The room tilted. What? He's called 17 times in 3 weeks. You can't avoid him forever. Vincenzo's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was announcing a dental appointment. Better to handle it now, on your terms, than have him show up unexpected. I don't want to see him. I know, we're going anyway. He checked his watch. You have 10 minutes to change into something appropriate. You can't just... 9 minutes now. Lena wanted to refuse. Wanted to dig her heels in and force him to drag her. But she'd learned enough to know that Vincenzo didn't bluff. If she didn't change, he'd take her as she was. And showing up to face her father in casual clothes felt like showing up to a battle without armor. She changed in 8 minutes. Black dress. Simple, but expensive. Hair pulled back. The diamond ring, her prisoner's brand, catching light like a warning. The drive into Rome proper took 30 minutes. Vincenzo spent it on phone calls in Italian, words too fast for Lena to follow completely. But she caught enough. A shipment delayed. Someone who needed convincing. Problems that required his particular brand of persuasion. They pulled up to a mid-range hotel near the Spanish Steps. Not cheap, but nowhere near the luxury Lena had become accustomed to in the palazzo. Her father was staying in room 412. Marco will wait in the hallway, Vincenzo said as they rode the elevator. You have 30 minutes. You're not coming in? This is between you and him. The elevator doors opened. But Lena, whatever he says, whatever promises he makes, remember that he put you here. Room 412 was at the end of a long hallway. Lena's hand shook as she knocked. Movement inside. Footsteps. The door opened. Her father looked like he'd aged a decade. Unshaven, thinner, wearing a wrinkled shirt that might have been the same one he'd worn the day he sold her. His eyes went wide. Lena! Her name came out cracked. Oh God, Lena! He reached for her. She stepped back. Don't. The word stopped him cold. They stood in the doorway, 3 feet of space between them that might as well have been miles. Can I? He gestured inside. Will you come in? Lena walked past him into a room that smelled like desperation and instant coffee. The bed was unmade, room service trays stacked on the desk. He'd been here a while. How long have you been in Rome? She asked. 2 weeks. I tried to see you, but they wouldn't let me pass the gate. He closed the door, hands shaking. You look good. Different, but good. Different. Lena's laugh was sharp. Is that what we're calling it? I didn't mean... What did you mean? She turned on him, 3 weeks of rage finally finding a target. When you signed those papers, when you traded me to pay your debt, what exactly did you mean? I was trying to save my life. By destroying mine? It's not destroyed. He moved toward her, desperate. You're alive, you're safe, you're living in a palace. I'm property. The scream tore out of her. You sold me to a criminal like I was a car you couldn't afford anymore. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, Lena's voice cracked. You could have gone to the police. You could have declared bankruptcy. You could have run. Instead, you offered up your daughter and called it a business deal. Her father's face crumpled. If I didn't pay him, they would have killed me. Do you understand that? These people don't negotiate. They don't give second chances. It was my life or me, Lena finished. You chose yourself. And now you're here looking for what? Forgiveness? Absolution? I'm here because you're my daughter and I love you. You don't sell people you love. The words hung between them like a guillotine blade. Her father sank onto the bed, head in his hands. I know what I did was wrong. I know I can't fix it. But Lena, please, I'm still your father. You're nothing to me. Lena's voice went cold, steady. The man I called my father died the moment he signed those papers. You're just someone who shares my DNA and taught me the most important lesson I'll ever learn. What lesson? That the only person I can trust is myself. She moved toward the door. Goodbye. Wait. He stood, stumbling. When can I see you again? Never. Lena, please. You made your choice. She opened the door. Marco straightened in the hallway, hand moving instinctively toward his jacket. Now live with it. She walked out and didn't look back. Vincenzo was waiting in the lobby, reading a newspaper like he had all the time in the world. He folded it when he saw her, studying her face with that clinical detachment she'd come to recognize. How do you feel? He asked. Like I just cut off a gangrenous limb. Lena's voice was hollow. It hurts, but at least it won't kill me now. Something flickered in Vincenzo's eyes. Not quite approval, but close. Good. You're learning to make hard choices. Is that what you wanted? For me to cut ties with him? I wanted you to stop being weak. He stood, buttoning his jacket. Your father was a wound that wouldn't heal. Now it will. They walked to the car in silence. Rome sprawled around them, tourists and traffic and life continuing like Lena's world hadn't just cracked open and reformed into something harder. There's a dinner tonight, Vincenzo said as they drove. Important associates. I want you there. Another observation session? No, tonight you participate. Lena's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means you're not decoration anymore. You're my wife. These men need to see that you're not some scared girl I bought. They need to see someone who belongs at that table. I don't belong at it. Then pretend. His voice cut through her protest. Because if they smell weakness, they'll use it. Against me, against you, against everything I've built. I thought you said you'd protect me. I will. By teaching you to protect yourself. He glanced at her. You've learned Italian. You've learned to fight. Now you learn to play the game, or you become a liability I can't afford to keep. The threat was subtle but clear. Lena had wondered sometimes what would happen if she failed Vincenzo's tests. Now she knew. He'd cut her loose the same way she'd just cut her father loose. A surgical removal of something that had become dangerous. That night, Lena spent 2 hours getting ready. Maria helped her choose a dress, deep red, elegant but not showy. Showed her how to style her hair so she looked older, more sophisticated. Applied makeup that sharpened her features instead of softening them. Remember, Maria said, fastening a necklace around Lena's throat, diamonds that probably cost more than Lena's childhood home. You are Signora De Luca. You bow to no one, you apologize for nothing, and you never, ever show fear. Even when I'm terrified? Especially then. Maria met her eyes in the mirror. Fear is blood in the water. These men are sharks. Show them blood and they'll circle. The dinner was at the palazzo. 12 guests in the formal dining room that Lena had only seen from doorways. The table gleamed with crystal and silver. Candles threw shadows across faces she'd seen before at other dinners, other meetings. Giacomo was there. The one who'd looked at her like meat. 2 brothers whose names she'd learned were Santo and Filippo, mid-40s, who ran shipping operations. A man called Leone, 60s, white hair, dead eyes, who Lena had overheard Vincenzo call the most dangerous person in Rome. And one woman, older, maybe 50, beautiful in a way that looked carved rather than born. Her name was Adriana, and she watched Lena the way a snake watches a mouse. Vincenzo stood when Lena entered, which made every man at the table stand. A show of respect that felt like theater. Gentlemen, Adriana, my wife Lena. She took the seat at Vincenzo's right, the seat of honor, or the hot seat, depending on how the night went. The first course arrived. Conversation started in Italian. Business talk that Lena followed enough to understand they were discussing territorial disputes in Naples. She ate quietly, listening, cataloging. Then Leone turned to her. Signora De Luca, your Italian has improved. It wasn't a compliment, it was a test. Grazie, Signor Leone. Lena kept her voice steady. I'm still learning. And what do you think of Rome? He switched to English. Is it everything you hoped? I didn't come to Rome with hopes. I came with obligations. The table went quiet. Vincenzo's hand tightened imperceptibly on his wine glass. Leone smiled. Honest. I appreciate that. Tell me, these obligations, do you resent them? Does a soldier resent their orders? Lena met his eyes. Resentment is irrelevant. There's duty and there's survival. Everything else is noise. Well said. Adriana's voice cut in, sharp and amused. Though I wonder, does your husband know you think of marriage as a military deployment? My husband knows exactly what our marriage is. Lena glanced at Vincenzo. We don't pretend otherwise. How refreshingly American. Giacomo leaned back in his chair. So direct. In Italy, we prefer our truths wrapped in prettier packages. I'm learning that too. Lena took a sip of wine, buying time to choose her next words carefully. But I've found that pretty packages often hide rot. Better to know what you're dealing with up front. Santo laughed. Actual, genuine laughter. Vincenzo, your wife has teeth. I approve. The conversation shifted, tension breaking like a fever. They moved through courses and topics, politics, business, gossip about people Lena didn't know. She participated when spoken to, stayed quiet when ignored, and watched everything. Halfway through the main course, Adriana turned to her again. I knew the last woman who sat in that chair. The table didn't go quiet this time, but Lena felt a tension shift. Vincenzo's jaw tightened. Is that so? Lena kept her voice neutral. Valentina, beautiful girl, much older than you, 28 when Vincenzo married her. She lasted 3 years before she left. Left? Ran away. Adriana's smile was poisonous. Couldn't handle the life. Last I heard, she was working in a bookshop in Florence, pretending none of this ever happened. Maria had mentioned previous women, but Vincenzo had never spoken about them, and Lena had never asked. Now she wondered if that had been a mistake. Then she was smarter than I am, Lena said carefully. She got out. Or weaker. Leone's voice was soft. Running is always easier than staying. Is it? Lena looked at him. I wouldn't know. I haven't tried. Would you? If you could? Giacomo's question hung like a blade. Every eye at that table was on her now. This was the real test. Not her Italian or her manners or her ability to make small talk. This was about loyalty. About whether she was with Vincenzo or just another woman counting days until escape. She could feel Vincenzo beside her, perfectly still, waiting to see which way she'd break. Lena set down her fork. 6 weeks ago, I didn't know this world existed. I was a girl working double shifts at a diner, trying to save enough for community college. Then my father traded me to settle a debt, and everything I thought I knew about my life turned out to be fiction. She paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. So would I run if I could? Maybe. Probably. But I can't. My passport is locked in a safe I don't have the combination to. I'm in a country where I barely speak the language, married to a man I didn't choose. Running isn't an option, which means I have 2 choices, break or bend, and I don't break easily. The silence that followed felt like held breath. Then Leone raised his glass. To Signora De Luca, who understands reality better than most people twice her age. The table drank. The tension cracked. And Lena realized she'd just passed some test she hadn't known she was taking. Vincenzo's hand found hers under the table, brief contact, barely a second. But she felt it. Approval, maybe. Or just acknowledgement that she'd survived another round in the ring. After dinner, the men retired to Vincenzo's study for cigars and business. Lena wasn't invited to witness. Adriana cornered her in the hallway. That was well done, the older woman said. The truth about being trapped, delivered like strength instead of complaint. Very clever. It wasn't clever. It was honest. Honesty delivered at the right moment is the cleverest weapon of all. Adriana studied her with sharp eyes. You're smarter than Valentina was. She never learned to use her cage as camouflage. What happened to her? Really? Exactly what I said. She ran. Vincenzo let her go because keeping someone who wants to leave is more trouble than it's worth. Adriana's smile turned sharp. But he didn't let her take anything with her. No money, no jewelry, no connections. She left with the clothes on her back and a train ticket to Florence. Last I heard, she was barely surviving. The message was clear. Running had a price. Why are you telling me this? Because I like you. Adriana adjusted her bracelet, diamonds that caught the chandelier light. And because women in this world need to help each other. The men, they'll never see us as equals, but we can make them need us. That's better than equality. That's power. I don't want power. Yes, you do. Adriana's voice dropped. You just don't know it yet, but you will. And when you do, remember who offered friendship first. She swept away, leaving Lena standing in that hallway wondering what kind of game she'd just been invited to play. The guests left near midnight. Lena helped Maria oversee the staff cleaning up, grateful for something to do with her hands that didn't involve thinking. You did well tonight, Maria said, collecting wine glasses. Better than well. You impressed them. I terrified myself. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Maria paused, glass in hand. Signor De Luca asked me to tell you he'd like to see you in his study when you're finished here. Lena's stomach dropped. Why? He didn't say, but he seemed pleased. Pleased. The word felt foreign applied to Vincenzo, who moved through life with the emotional range of a glacier. 20 minutes later, Lena knocked on the study door. Come. Vincenzo sat behind his desk, jacket off, tie loosened, the most casual she'd ever seen him. A bottle of whiskey sat open, 2 glasses poured. Sit. He gestured to the chair across from him. Lena sat, trying to read his expression and finding nothing. You handled tonight well, he said, sliding one glass toward her. Better than I expected. You expected me to fail? I expected you to survive. You did more than that. You impressed Leone, which is nearly impossible. You disarmed Adriana, which is dangerous but useful, and you made it clear to everyone at that table that you're not leaving. I didn't say I wasn't leaving. I said I couldn't. The effect is the same. Vincenzo sipped his whiskey. They think you're committed, which makes you valuable. As what? A prop in your business theater? As my wife. His voice was flat, factual. These people respect strength. You showed them strength tonight. That reflects on me. Makes me look like someone who chooses well. Glad I could boost your reputation. Don't be bitter. It doesn't suit you. He leaned back in his chair. I told you when this started that I wanted someone who could learn to navigate this world. You're learning faster than anyone I've seen, including Valentina. So he'd heard Adriana's comments. Nothing happened in this house without Vincenzo knowing. What happened to her? Lena asked. The truth this time. Vincenzo was quiet for a long moment. She was the daughter of a business associate. The marriage was arranged to cement an alliance. She was sweet, soft, completely unprepared for this life. I tried to teach her. She refused to learn. Said she wanted to be loved, not trained like a dog. And after 3 years of her crying herself to sleep every night and flinching every time I entered a room, I gave her a choice. Stay and adapt or leave with nothing. She chose nothing. He finished his whiskey. I haven't seen her since. Last I heard, she married a teacher in Florence and has 2 children. She got the life she wanted. Just not with me. Do you regret it? Letting her go? No, she was miserable, which made her useless. You can't build anything on misery. His eyes found Lena's. But I learned from it, which is why I chose differently this time. You didn't choose me. You bought me. I chose to accept your father's offer instead of taking his life. That was a choice. Vincenzo poured himself another drink. And every day since, I've chosen to invest time in teaching you instead of locking you in a room like some princes in the old stories. Those were choices too. You want credit for not being worse than you could have been? I want you to understand that this, he gestured between them, is not what you think it is. I'm not your enemy, Lena. I'm the only ally you have in this world. You're my captor. I'm both. He stood, moving to the window. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner we can move past this. Move past it to what? Vincenzo turned from the window, and for the first time since Lena had met him, she saw something like honesty in his face. To you actually living here instead of just surviving. To you using that sharp mind for something more than plotting escapes you'll never attempt. To you becoming what you showed them tonight, someone who belongs. I'll never belong here. You already do. His voice was quiet. You just haven't accepted it yet. He moved past her toward the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. Adriana will invite you to lunch within the week. You should go. Why? Because she's the most dangerous woman in Rome, and having her as a friend is better than having her as an enemy. He glanced back. And because you need allies who aren't me. Build them carefully. He left her alone in his study, surrounded by books and expensive whiskey, and the growing realization that she was playing a game whose rules she was only beginning to understand. That night, Lena stood on her balcony and looked out at Rome. 6 weeks ago, she'd been someone else, someone small and scared who thought the biggest challenge in her life was paying for community college. Now she was Signor De Luca, wife to a crime lord, property in a transaction she hadn't agreed to. But also, and this was the part that scared her most, she was becoming someone who could sit at a table with wolves and make them respect her. Someone who could cut her father out of her life like a tumor. Someone who was learning to use her cage as camouflage. She didn't know if that was survival or surrender. Maybe, in this world, they were the same thing. Adriana's invitation came 5 days later, delivered on cream cardstock with her name embossed in gold. Lunch at a restaurant Lena had never heard of. 1 o'clock. Dress accordingly. It's a test, Maria said, examining the card like it might explode. Everything with Adriana is a test. What kind of test? The kind where there's no right answer, only wrong ones. Maria set the card down. She wants to see if you're smart enough to be useful or stupid enough to be dangerous. Either way, you need to go. Lena went. The restaurant was hidden in Trastevere, down a cobblestone street too narrow for cars. No sign outside, just a red door that opened into a courtyard where Rome's most dangerous women apparently took lunch. Adriana sat at a corner table, already halfway through a bottle of wine. She waved Lena over with the languid confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. Sit, darling. I ordered for both of us. You're not vegetarian, are you? No. Good. Vegetarians are exhausting. Adriana poured wine into Lena's glass without asking. How are you finding married life? Still counting the days until escape? Or has Vincenzo managed to make you comfortable in your gilded cage? Lena sipped the wine, buying time. It was better than anything she'd tasted before, which meant nothing in this world, where even the water probably cost more than her old car. I'm finding my footing, she said carefully. Diplomatic. Adriana's smile sharpened. But I didn't invite you here for diplomacy. I invited you because I'm curious. You're the first woman Vincenzo's brought into this life who doesn't look like she's dying inside. Why is that? Maybe I'm better at hiding it. Maybe. Or maybe you're actually smart enough to see the opportunity. What opportunity? Lena set down her glass. I was sold to pay my father's debt. Where's the opportunity in that? You married one of the most powerful men in Italy. You live in luxury. You have access to wealth and connections most women would kill for. Adriana leaned forward. The only question is whether you're smart enough to use it. Use it for what? Whatever you want. Adriana's eyes glittered. That's what the clever ones do. They stop seeing themselves as victims and start seeing themselves as investors. You gave up your freedom. Unfortunate, but done. Now, the question is what you get in return. The waiter arrived with their first course. Lena stared at food she couldn't identify while Adriana watched her, like a hawk watching a mouse decide which way to run. Let me tell you a story, Adriana said, cutting into something that might have been fish. 20 years ago, I was a secretary in my father's shipping company. Pretty, competent, completely invisible. Then I met Antonio Rossini, older man, powerful, connected. He wanted a wife who could host dinners and look good in photographs. I wanted access to his world. So we made a deal. You married him. I married him. And for 5 years I played the dutiful wife, smiled at his associates, ran his household, looked the other way when he took mistresses. Adriana sipped her wine. But I was also learning. Every dinner party, every business meeting, every whispered conversation, I absorbed it all. And when Antonio died, I discovered he'd left me everything because I'd made myself indispensable. How did he die? Adriana's smile was arctic. Heart attack. Very sudden, very convenient. The implication hung between them like smoke. Are you telling me you killed your husband? I'm telling you that I understood the assignment. Adriana set down her fork. Antonio thought he was using me as decoration. I let him think that while I learned every secret of his business, when he was gone, I didn't just inherit his money, I inherited his empire. And now those men who used to pat my head and call me little one, they come to me for permission to operate in my territory. Lena's stomach turned. Why are you telling me this? Because you remind me of myself at your age, smarter than people give you credit for, trapped in a situation you didn't choose. But unlike me, you're starting with advantages I didn't have. Vincenzo is actually teaching you. Antonio barely let me sit in on meetings. You're being educated. The question is whether you're paying attention. You want me to what? Wait for Vincenzo to die and take over his business? I want you to stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like a survivor. Adriana's voice dropped. This world doesn't reward the weak or the moral. It rewards the clever and the ruthless. You've already shown you can be clever. The question is whether you can be ruthless when it matters. The food turned to ash in Lena's mouth. I'm not interested in becoming a crime lord. No one plans to become what they become. We just make choices, and those choices make us. Adriana signaled for the next course. I'm not telling you to poison Vincenzo's wine. I'm telling you to recognize that you have value beyond being his pretty young wife. Use it. Build relationships. Learn secrets. Make yourself indispensable. Because the day you stop being useful is the day you become disposable. The rest of lunch passed in a haze of conversation that felt like combat disguised as gossip. Adriana named names, who was sleeping with whom, who owed money they couldn't pay, which alliances were fracturing. Information delivered like gifts wrapped in razor wire. One more thing, Adriana said as they finished coffee. There's someone I want you to meet, a woman who runs a very specific kind of business. She's having a gathering next week. I'm inviting you as my guest. What kind of business? The kind that keeps men in this world honest, or at least predictable. Adriana's smile was sharp. You'll understand when you see it. Say yes. Lena should have said no, should have recognized this for what it was, another test, another trap, another step deeper into a world she never wanted to be part of. Instead, she heard herself say, yes. Adriana's approval felt like winning a prize she hadn't known she was competing for. That night, Vincenzo was waiting in the library when Lena returned. He looked up from his book as she entered, expression unreadable. How was lunch with Adriana? Educational. I'm sure it was. He closed the book. What did she want? To see if I was worth her time. And? Are you? Lena moved to the window, watching Rome's lights flicker in the distance. She told me about her husband, how he died. Antonio. Vincenzo's voice was neutral. Heart attack, officially, though there were rumors. She didn't deny them. Adriana never denies anything. It's more effective to let people wonder. He stood, joining her at the window. Did she offer you anything? Friendship? Alliance? Knowledge? Lena turned to face him. She invited me to some gathering next week. Wouldn't say what kind. Vincenzo's jaw tightened. The salon. What's the salon? A very exclusive, very dangerous gathering of women who run businesses that officially don't exist. He was quiet for a moment. Information brokers. Blackmailers. The kind of women who collect secrets the way other people collect art. If Adriana's taking you there, it means she sees potential in you. For what? For becoming someone like her. Vincenzo's eyes met hers. You should go. Lena blinked. You want me to go? I want you to understand the full scope of this world. Not just the men's side, the women's side too. the one most people pretend doesn't exist. He moved back to his desk. But be careful. Adriana's offering you tools. Tools can build or destroy depending on who's holding them. And which one do you want me to do? I want you to survive. His voice was flat. Everything else is secondary. The next week passed in a blur of training and lessons and dinners where Lena practiced the art of looking engaged while cataloging every word spoken. She was getting better at reading rooms, at recognizing the weight behind casual comments, at understanding that in this world, nothing was ever really casual. Carlo had moved her training beyond basic self-defense into something more targeted. How to break someone's grip. Where to hit to incapacitate instead of just hurt. How to use everyday objects as weapons, if needed. "Why are you teaching me this?" Lena asked after he showed her how to use a pen as a stabbing weapon. "Because Signor De Luca wants you to survive if something happens and I'm not there." Carlo adjusted her grip. "And because in this world, women who can defend themselves live longer than women who can't." "Has something happened to other women?" Carlo's expression went dark. "You're not the first woman in this house. You're just the first one Signor De Luca actually wants to keep alive." The words stuck with Lena for days. The salon was held in a private villa outside Rome, surrounded by walls and guards, who made Marco look friendly. Adriana picked Lena up in a car that probably cost more than a house, wearing a dress that probably cost more than the car. "Nervous?" Adriana asked as they drove. "Should I be?" "Probably." Adriana's smile was sharp. "But don't show it. These women can smell fear like blood in water." The villa was beautiful in the way predators are beautiful. Elegant, dangerous, mesmerizing. They entered through gardens lit by torches that threw dancing shadows across ancient statues. Inside, 30 women moved through rooms decorated with art that belonged in museums. Young, old, beautiful, plain. The only thing they had in common was the particular kind of sharpness in their eyes that came from surviving in a world designed to destroy them. Adriana introduced her to a woman named Sofia, who ran a network of informants across Europe, to Elena, who controlled casino interests in 3 countries, to Margarita, whose legitimate business was art dealing, but whose real business was moving things that shouldn't be moved across borders that shouldn't be crossed. "And this," Adriana said, bringing Lena to a woman who looked like somebody's grandmother, "is Julia. She's been running intelligence operations since before most of us were born." Julia studied Lena with eyes that had seen everything twice. "You're Vincenzo's new wife." "The American." "Yes." "How are you finding it? Marriage to a man who builds empires on bodies?" The question was a blade wrapped in politeness. Lena felt every woman in earshot turn to listen. "I'm finding it educational," Lena said carefully. "I'm learning that power has many forms, and that the people who really hold it are rarely the ones standing in spotlights." Julia's weathered face cracked into something like a smile. "Smart answer. Diplomatic without being weak. Adriana, you chose well with this one." "I thought so." Adriana's hand rested briefly on Lena's shoulder, a gesture of claim, of protection. "She's rough yet, but she learns quickly." The evening unfolded like a masterclass in power Lena had never known existed. These women spoke in codes and implications, trading information like currency. A rumor about a politician's mistress traded for knowledge about a shipping route, a piece of blackmail exchanged for a business opportunity. And Lena realized with growing horror and fascination that this was the real engine of the world Vincenzo lived in. Not the men with their guns and territories, but the women who collected their secrets and learned to leverage them. Near midnight, Julia pulled Lena aside. "Walk with me." They moved through the gardens while music and laughter drifted from the villa. Julia moved slowly, leaning on a cane carved from dark wood. "Adriana thinks you have potential," Julia said, "and Adriana's rarely wrong about these things. But potential means nothing if you don't understand what you're becoming." "And what am I becoming?" "Someone who has to choose." Julia stopped beside a fountain where water trickled over ancient stone. "You can be Vincenzo's wife, and nothing more. A pretty trophy he keeps safe and bored. Or you can be someone who matters in your own right. But that second path requires you to get your hands dirty." "How dirty?" "That depends on your conscience." Julia's eyes glittered in the torchlight. Some of us just collect information. Others use it to destroy people. The question is where you draw your line. And if I don't want to draw it at all, if I just want to survive this, then you'll spend your life being afraid. Julia's voice was gentle but firm. Because survival without power is just waiting to be destroyed. I've watched women like you for 50 years. The ones who try to stay innocent and good, they don't last. The ones who accept reality and learn to navigate it, they build empires. She handed Lena a card, cream stock, embossed numbers, nothing else. If you ever need help that Vincenzo can't or won't provide, call that number. We take care of our own, but only if you're actually one of us. Lena took the card, feeling its weight like a promise or a threat. The drive home was quiet. Adriana seemed pleased, which probably meant Lena had passed whatever test she'd been unknowingly taking. You did well tonight, Adriana said as they approached the palazzo. Better than well. Julia doesn't give her number to just anyone. What did she mean? We take care of our own? Exactly what it sounds like. That number connects you to a network of women who can make problems disappear. Or create problems for people who deserve them. Adriana glanced at her. Keep it somewhere safe. And don't use it unless you absolutely have to. Because once you call that number, you're declaring yourself part of this world for real. No more pretending you're just an innocent victim. The car pulled up to the palazzo gates. Marco was waiting, along with two other guards Lena didn't recognize. Something felt wrong. What's happening? Lena asked. Adriana's expression hardened. I don't know, but stay behind Marco. And if shooting starts, get to the ground and stay there. The gates opened. They drove through. Marco opened Lena's door, hand on his gun, eyes scanning the courtyard. Signora, inside, now. Lena ran. Behind her, she heard car doors, voices, the click of weapons being readied. She burst through the palazzo doors to find Vincenzo in the entrance hall, surrounded by men with guns, talking rapidly in Italian too fast for her to follow. He looked up as she entered. His face was stone, but something flickered in his eyes. Relief, maybe. Upstairs. Your room. Lock the door. What's happening? Now, Lena. She ran. Behind her, voices rose in argument. She heard Adriana's sharp tones joining the mix. Reached her room, locked the door, backed away from it like the wood might shatter any second. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time had stopped making sense. Then footsteps in the hallway. A knock. Lena, it's me. Vincenzo's voice. She opened the door. He stood there, jacket off, tie gone, sleeves rolled up. There was blood on his shirt. Not much, but enough. His knuckles were split. Are you hurt? The question came out before Lena could stop it. No, not my blood. He walked past her into the room, moving to the window, checking the courtyard below. We had a situation. It's handled. What kind of situation? The kind where someone thought attacking my home while you were gone would send a message. His voice was flat, cold. They were wrong. Who? Doesn't matter. They won't be a problem anymore. He turned from the window. Are you all right? Did anyone approach you at the salon? Say anything unusual? No, just everyone was normal. Well, their version of normal. Lena's hands were shaking. Vincenzo, what happened? He studied her for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. Sit down. She sat. He remained standing, arms crossed, that familiar mask of control firmly in place. There's a faction in Naples that's been unhappy with certain territorial agreements. Tonight, while you were at the salon, they sent 3 men to deliver a message. They got past the outer gate before my security stopped them. Stopped them how? Permanently. No emotion in his voice. 2 are dead. 1 is in the wine cellar answering questions about who sent him and what their plans are. By morning, I'll know everything he knows, and Naples will know what happens when people threaten what's mine. The casual way he said it made Lena's stomach turn. You're going to torture him. I'm going to get information that keeps you alive. Vincenzo's eyes were hard. You're my wife. That makes you a target. Not because of who you are, but because of what hurting you would do to me. Do you understand? I understand that people died tonight. Yes. And if they hadn't, you might have come home to something much worse. He moved closer, and Lena saw something in his face she'd never seen before. Actual fear, quickly buried. This is the world you live in now. People will try to use you against me. They'll try to take you, hurt you, kill you, not because of anything you've done, but because you're leverage. That's why I've been training you. That's why I wanted you at the salon tonight, surrounded by Adriana's security. Because you need to understand what you're worth to people who want to destroy me. I didn't ask for this. No, but you're in it anyway. His voice softened a fraction. I need to know, if something had happened tonight, if someone had gotten to you at the salon or on the drive home, could you defend yourself? Lena thought of Carlo's lessons. The pen is a weapon. Where to hit to disable. Maybe. I don't know. I've never actually. That changes tomorrow. Vincenzo headed for the door. Carlo will increase your training. You'll learn to shoot. And from now on, you don't leave this property without armed escort. No exceptions. I'm a prisoner again. You're protected. He paused in the doorway. There's a difference. After he left, Lena sat in the dark and tried to process what had just happened. Men had died tonight, in her home, because of her. Not because of anything she'd done, just because she existed. The next morning, Carlo took her to the firing range in the palazzo's basement, a room Lena hadn't known existed. He put a pistol in her hands and taught her how to hold it, how to aim, how to breathe through the recoil. Again, he said after her 10th shot went wide. Focus. The target is not paper. The target is someone trying to hurt you, someone who wants you dead. Now shoot. She shot. This time the bullet hit center mass. Better. Again. Boss? By the end of the session, Lena's hands were steady and her grouping was tight. Carlo nodded approval. You're a natural. Most people shake too much at first. You don't. Should I be worried that I'm not shaking? You should be grateful. He collected the spent shells. Fear makes you freeze. You don't freeze. That's good. That afternoon, Vincenzo summoned her to his study. The man from the wine cellar was gone. Lena didn't ask where. Vincenzo looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes were sharp. Sit. We need to talk. Lena sat, anxiety crawling up her spine. The attack last night was a test, Vincenzo said. Someone wanted to know if I'd adequately protected you, if there were weaknesses they could exploit. Were there? One. They got closer than they should have. That's been corrected. He leaned back in his chair. But it raised a larger question. You've been here 3 months. You're learning, adapting, becoming someone who can navigate this world. But you're also still vulnerable. And as long as you're vulnerable, you're a liability. Lena's chest tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to decide what you want to be. The scared girl I married, or someone who can actually survive what's coming. What's coming? War. The word fell like a stone. Naples wants territory I control. They're not going to stop with one failed attack. They're going to escalate, which means everyone connected to me becomes a target, including you. So what do you want me to do? Vincenzo pulled out a folder. Inside were photographs, buildings, faces, documents in Italian. I want you to learn, really learn, not just Italian and self-defense. I want you to understand my business, the legitimate side and the other side. The territories, the income streams, the alliances, everything. Why? Because if something happens to me, you need to be able to protect yourself. And the only way to protect yourself in this world is to have power. Real power. Not just the kind that comes from being my wife. Lena stared at the folder. You're asking me to become part of your business. I'm offering you the choice. You can stay as you are, protected, provided for, but ultimately helpless if I'm gone. Or you can learn to stand on your own, build relationships, make yourself valuable beyond just being Vincenzo De Luca's wife. It was the same thing Adriana had said, the same thing Julia had implied. Everyone in this world seemed to think Lena needed to become something more than a victim. And if I say no, then nothing changes. You continue training, continue learning, continue being protected, but you remain what you are now, dependent. He closed the folder. The choice is yours, but make it soon, because Naples is coming, and I need to know if you're someone I can trust to survive without me. He left her alone with the folder and a decision that felt like standing on a cliff edge. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She kept seeing the blood on Vincenzo's shirt, kept hearing Julia's words about getting her hands dirty, kept feeling the weight of the gun Carlo had put in her hands. She was 19 years old. 3 months ago, her biggest worry had been saving for community college. Now she was deciding whether to become a criminal. Except, and this was the thought that kept circling, was she really deciding anything? Or had the decision been made the moment her father signed those papers, the moment Vincenzo slid that ring onto her finger? Maybe there was no choice. Maybe there had never been a choice. Maybe survival was just learning to accept what you'd become and making the best of it. At 3 in the morning, Lena walked downstairs to Vincenzo's study. She didn't knock, just opened the door. He was still awake, reading at his desk. He looked up, unsurprised. "I'll do it," Lena said. "I'll learn your business. All of it." Vincenzo studied her for a long moment. "You understand what that means?" "It means I stop pretending I'm not part of this world. It means I stop being helpless." Her voice was steady. "It means I become someone who can survive when the wolves come knocking." "Yes." He closed his book. "It means all of that." "Then teach me." Lena moved closer to the desk. "Teach me everything." Something shifted in Vincenzo's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "All right, we start tomorrow. But Lena, once we start this, there's no going back. You can't unlearn what I'm going to teach you. You can't pretend innocence once you understand how the machine really works." "I lost my innocence the day my father sold me." Lena's hands were steady on the desk. "Now I want to learn how to make sure no one ever sells me again." Vincenzo stood, extending his hand across the desk. "Then we have an agreement." Lena shook his hand. His grip was firm, scarred, the hand of a man who'd built an empire on violence and control. It was also, for better or worse, the hand that held her future. She'd just decided to hold it back. The education started the next morning over breakfast in Vincenzo's study instead of the formal dining room. He spread financial ledgers across his desk like a general planning war, and in a way, that's exactly what he was doing. "This is the legitimate side, but," he said, pointing to columns of numbers that represented shipping companies, real estate holdings, restaurants scattered across 3 countries. "Everything documented, taxed, legal. It generates roughly 40% of our income. And the other 60%? Protection services, imports that bypass certain regulations, financial consulting for people who need discretion." His finger moved to a second set of books. "Also documented, just differently. The art is making sure the 2 sides never touch on paper." Lena studied the numbers, trying to make sense of the architecture. "How do you keep them separate?" "Shell companies, intermediaries, people who handle transactions without knowing what they're handling." Vincenzo flipped to a page covered in names and connections drawn like a spider web. "Every business has layers. The people at the bottom think they work for a shipping company. The people in the middle know better but don't ask questions. Only the people at the top see the whole picture." "How many people are at the top?" 3. "Me, my accountant Sal, and now you." The weight of that settled on Lena's shoulders. "Why me?" "Because if something happens to me, someone needs to know where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively." He pulled out another folder. "This is Naples, the Caruso family. They've been pushing into our territory for 6 months. Small moves at first, taking over a few protection routes, undercutting our prices on imports. Now they're getting bolder. Like attacking your home. Like attacking my home." Vincenzo's jaw tightened. "Which means they think I'm weak, or distracted, or both." "Are you?" He looked at her then, really looked at her. "I wasn't. Then you happened." "I'm a distraction?" "You're a variable I didn't account for." He said it without malice, just fact. "I expected to marry someone I could train and control. Instead, I got someone who learns too fast and asks too many questions. It's been educational." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." He closed the folder. "The Carusos think you're a weakness they can exploit. They're wrong, but we need to make sure everyone else knows they're wrong." "How do we do that?" "By showing them you're not some scared girl hiding behind my walls. You're someone who understands this world and knows how to move in it." Vincenzo stood. "Which brings us to tonight." "What's tonight?" "A meeting with our suppliers. The people who provide the goods we move through less official channels. They're nervous after the attack. They need to see that we're stable, that I'm in control. He studied her. And they need to see that my wife isn't a liability. Lena's stomach dropped. You want me at a criminal meeting? I want you at a business meeting. The criminal part is semantics. He moved toward the door. 8 o'clock. Wear something that says you belong there. And Lena, these men are not like the ones who came to dinner. They're rougher, meaner. Don't show fear. He left her with the ledgers and a knot of anxiety in her chest that felt like swallowing stones. That afternoon, Maria helped her choose an outfit that walked the line between elegant and intimidating. Black dress, simple jewelry, hair pulled back in a way that made her look older. In the mirror, Lena barely recognized herself. You look like you belong, Maria said quietly. That's what matters. I don't belong. Then pretend better. Maria adjusted the necklace. These men tonight, they'll test you. Not with words, with looks, with body language, with the way they position themselves in the room. If you flinch, they'll smell it. So don't flinch. What if I can't help it? Then you learn to lie with your face. Maria met her eyes in the mirror. That's what all of us do. We learn to wear masks until the masks become our faces. The meeting was held in a warehouse on the outskirts of Rome, the kind of place where legitimate business ended and something else began. Marco drove, 2 other guards following in a second car. They pulled up to a building that looked abandoned from the outside but hummed with activity within. Vincenzo helped her out of the car, his hand on her lower back, possessive, protective, a signal to everyone watching that she was his. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something between an office and a fortress. Men with guns stood at intervals. Others sat at tables counting money or checking inventory. The air smelled like cigarettes and something chemical Lena couldn't identify. A man approached, 50s, built like a truck, scar running from his left eye to his jaw. Vincenzo, we were starting to wonder if you'd lost your nerve after the other night. My nerve is fine, Enzo. My patience with people who test it is what's running thin. Vincenzo's voice was cold. This is my wife, Lena. Enzo's eyes crawled over her like insects. The American. Heard you were young. Didn't realize you were a child. I'm 19. Lena kept her voice steady. Old enough to be here. Old enough to know what questions not to ask. Something flickered in Enzo's eyes. Smart mouth. Let's see if you're smart in other ways. He gestured toward the back. We're waiting on you. They moved deeper into the warehouse to a room where 6 men sat around a table covered in documents and product samples that Lena recognized from her education that morning. Pharmaceuticals that needed special handling, electronics that didn't have serial numbers, other things she didn't want to look at too closely. Vincenzo took the head of the table. Lena sat at his right, feeling every eye in the room assess her worth. Gentlemen, Vincenzo began in English. For her benefit, she realized. I understand you're concerned about security after the incident. Let me be clear. The Naples problem is being handled. Handled how? This from a man with dead eyes and hands that never stopped moving. They hit your home. That's not a small thing. And they paid for it. 2 of their soldiers are dead. The 3rd told us everything we needed to know before he joined them. Vincenzo's voice was flat. By the end of the week, the Carusos will understand what happens when they mistake patience for weakness. And her? Enzo jerked his chin toward Lena. She a target now? Because if your domestic situation starts affecting our business, my wife is not your concern. Vincenzo's voice dropped to something dangerous. She's protected, trained, and more importantly, she understands that loyalty in this business is the only currency that matters. Don't you, Lena? Every eye turned to her. This was the test. The real one. Not whether she could sit quietly, but whether she could speak when it mattered. I understand that my husband's business is built on trust, Lena said, meeting Enzo's eyes. And that trust is earned through consistency. You're worried that the attack means instability. I understand that. But instability would be if we'd run, if we'd hidden, if we'd shown fear. Instead, we handled the problem and we're here. On time, ready to work. That's not instability. That's control. Silence. Then one of the other men, younger, sharp suit, laughed. She's got balls. I'll give you that, Vincenzo. Maybe this marriage isn't as stupid as we thought. My marriages are never stupid, Vincenzo said coolly. They're strategic. Now, can we discuss actual business, or do we need to spend more time questioning my personal life? The meeting continued for 2 hours. Lena listened as they discussed routes and payments, problems with customs officials who needed additional convincing, territories that were becoming too hot to operate in. She watched Vincenzo negotiate, never raising his voice, never showing anger, but radiating a control that made grown men defer to him like schoolchildren. And she realized something that made her stomach turn. She was fascinated, not by the criminal part, not by the violence or the moral ambiguity, but by the architecture of power itself. The way Vincenzo moved pieces on a board these men couldn't even see. The way he turned problems into opportunities, threats into leverage. It was horrible. It was brilliant, and she couldn't look away. On the drive home, Vincenzo was quiet for the first 10 minutes. Then he spoke without looking at her. "You did well tonight. I was terrified. I know. But you didn't show it. That's what matters." He glanced at her. "You're learning faster than I expected. It's both useful and concerning." "Why concerning?" "Because people who learn too fast sometimes think they know more than they do. And that kind of confidence gets people killed." His voice was gentle but firm. "You're not ready to operate independently. Not yet. Don't mistake understanding for capability." "I don't." Lena watched Rome slide past the window. "But I'm starting to understand why you do what you do. The power of it. The control." Power is a drug," Vincenzo said quietly. "It makes you feel invincible right up until someone puts a bullet in your head. Don't fall in love with it." "Is that what happened to you? You fell in love with power." "No, I fell in love with survival. Power was just the tool I used to stay alive." He was quiet for a moment. "My father was a fisherman in Sicily. Honest man, worked himself to death for nothing. I watched him break his body for scraps while the men who controlled the docks got rich. I decided I'd rather be the one controlling the docks." It was the first time he'd told her anything real about himself. Lena tucked it away like a treasure. "Do you regret it? Choosing this life?" "I regret what it cost, not what it gave me." He pulled up to the palazzo gates. "Remember that, Lena. Everything has a price. Make sure you know what you're willing to pay before you commit to the purchase." The next 3 weeks were a blur of education that felt like drinking from a fire hose. Vincenzo taught her the business during the day. Who paid for what? Which officials were bought? How money moved through systems designed to make it invisible. In the evenings, Carlo drilled her on weapons and tactics until her body moved on instinct instead of thought. And at night she studied the folders Vincenzo gave her. Dossiers on every major player in their world. Photographs, histories, weaknesses. Information that could destroy lives if used correctly. "Why are you giving me this?" she asked one night after he handed her a file on the Caruso family. "Because knowledge is ammunition, and I want you armed." He poured himself whiskey. "The Carusos are planning something. I can feel it. And when they move, I need you to understand who they are and what they're capable of." "What are they capable of?" "Murder, torture, extortion, the usual." He sipped his drink. "But they're also desperate. They've been losing ground for 2 years. Desperate people make mistakes. I want to be ready when they do." The mistake came 4 days later. Lena was in the library with Alicia, working through a translation of a business contract, when Marco burst through the door. "Signora, upstairs, now." "What's happening?" "Vincenzo's orders. Move." She ran, Alessia forgotten behind her. Marco led her not to her room, but to a section of the palazzo she'd never seen. A safe room hidden behind a false wall in Vincenzo's bedroom. Steel reinforced, stocked with supplies, phone line that bypassed the normal system. "Stay here until I come get you," Marco said. "Don't open this door for anyone else. Not Maria, not Carlo, only me or Vincenzo. Understand?" "What's happening?" "The Carusos just hit one of our warehouses, killed 3 of our people. This is retaliation." His face was grim. "Which means they might try for the house again. So you stay here, you stay quiet, and you wait." He closed the door. Lena heard locks engage, electronic, mechanical, final. She was alone in a steel box with emergency supplies and a growing sense of dread. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time did weird things in windowless rooms. Lena found a pistol in one of the supply crates, the same model Carlo had taught her to shoot. She checked it like he'd shown her. Loaded. Safety on. Ready. She sat with her back to the wall, gun in her lap, and waited. Sounds filtered through the thick walls. Shouting. Something that might have been gunfire, or might have been her imagination. She couldn't tell. More time. Her hands started shaking. She forced them still. Then footsteps outside. Someone trying the door. "Lena," Vincenzo's voice. "It's over. Open up." She went to the door, then stopped. "Tell me something only you would know." A pause. Then, "The first night we met, you told me I was a monster. I agreed. I said freedom was overrated." Lena opened the door. Vincenzo stood there, suit jacket gone, shirt torn at the shoulder, blood on his face from a cut above his eye. Behind him, the bedroom was destroyed, furniture overturned, bullet holes in the wall, one window shattered. "Are you hurt?" She reached for him without thinking. "Not badly." He caught her hand, held it. "They got inside this time. 4 of them. We stopped them, but—" He glanced at the destruction. "It was closer than it should have been. How did they get past security?" "Someone helped them, one of the exterior guards." His voice was ice. "He's being questioned now. We'll know who bought him within the hour." Lena looked at the blood on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes, and something shifted in her chest. He could have died tonight. Would have maybe, if he'd been less prepared or less ruthless. And then what would have happened to her? "This can't keep going," she said. "They're not going to stop." "I know." Vincenzo released her hand, "which is why tomorrow we end it." "How?" "By hitting them so hard they don't get back up." He moved to the shattered window, looking out at Rome. "I've been patient, measured, trying to resolve this without all-out war. But they've made their choice, so now I make mine." "What do you need me to do?" He turned, studying her. "Stay safe. Stay here. Let me handle this." "No." "Lena, you said you wanted me to learn this business, to understand how it works. Well, I'm learning. And what I'm learning is that hiding while you fight my battles makes me look weak. Makes us look weak." She moved closer. "So what do you actually need me to do?" Vincenzo was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke rapid Italian. Hung up. "There's a meeting tomorrow night, neutral territory. Me, the head of the Caruso family, mediators from the council that oversees these things. One last chance to resolve this without burning Naples to the ground." He met her eyes. "I want you there." "Why?" "Because these meetings are about power and perception. If I bring my wife, I'm showing confidence, showing that I'm not afraid of what they might try. It's a message. Or it makes me a target. You're already a target. At least this way you're a target I can protect while sending a message at the same time." He touched her face, thumb brushing the edge of her jaw. "But I won't force you. This is your choice." Lena thought about the steel room, about hiding while men fought and died, about becoming the kind of woman who mattered in her own right instead of just being someone's property. "I'll go," she said. "But I'm armed." "I wouldn't have it any other way." The next day was preparation. Carlo ran her through scenarios, how to move in a crowded room, where to position herself for cover, how to draw and fire if things went wrong. Vincenzo gave her a pistol small enough to hide in her purse, but powerful enough to matter. "Ideally, you never touch this," he said, showing her how to quick draw from the purse. "But if you do, don't hesitate. Point and shoot. Then get behind me or Marco." "Have you ever hesitated?" Lena asked. "Once, when I was 18, I hesitated, and the man I hesitated to kill put 2 bullets in my brother." Vincenzo's voice was flat. "My brother survived. The man didn't. I never hesitated again." That night, Lena dressed for war disguised as dinner. Black dress, diamond necklace, hair swept up to expose her neck, vulnerability on display as armor. The gun in her purse felt heavy as a secret. The meeting was in a restaurant that looked like it hadn't been open to the public in decades. Private rooms, security everywhere. The kind of place where important people made important decisions about who lived and who died. The Carusos were already there when Vincenzo and Lena arrived. 3 men, the father, Salvatore, and his 2 sons, Marco and Dante. All of them looked at Lena like she was a mistake Vincenzo had brought to a grown-up table. "You brought your child bride to a war council?" Salvatore's voice dripped contempt. "Touching. Stupid, but touching." "My wife goes where I go," Vincenzo said calmly. "And considering your people have tried to kill her twice, I thought she should see who's responsible." "We haven't tried to kill anyone." Marco Caruso leaned back in his chair. "We've been defending our territory from your overreach." "My territory, which your people have been stealing from." Vincenzo sat, Lena beside him. "But we're here to find a solution, not assign blame. So let's hear it. What do you want?" "Naples," Salvatore said bluntly. "All of it. Your operations there shut down, your people pulled out, your influence gone. In exchange, we leave Rome alone." "No. Then we keep fighting until one of us is dead. If that's your choice." Vincenzo's voice was ice. "But understand what you're choosing. You hit my warehouse, killed my people, attacked my home twice. You think that's a show of strength. I think it's desperation. You're bleeding money and territory, and you're hoping I'll give you Naples to stop the bleeding. I won't." "Then what will you give us?" Dante spoke for the first time, younger than his brother, eyes sharp. "Nothing. Because you're negotiating from a position you think is strength, but is actually weakness." Vincenzo pulled out his phone, tapped it, slid it across the table. Salvatore looked at the screen. His face went white. "Where did you get this?" "From the guard you bought to let your people inside my home, before we killed him." Vincenzo's voice was flat. "That's a full accounting of your family's finances. The legitimate businesses that are failing, the criminal operations that are barely profitable, the debts you owe to people who don't negotiate. You're not fighting me for territory. You're fighting me because you're drowning, and you think my territory will save you. It won't." The room went silent. Lena watched the Carusos process the information, saw the moment they realized Vincenzo had beaten them before they'd even sat down. "You've got nothing," Vincenzo continued. "No leverage, no position, no future unless I allow it. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pull your people back to Naples. You're going to stay there. And in exchange, I won't destroy what's left of your business and bury your family so deep no one remembers you existed." "You can't," Marco started. "I can. I will. The only question is whether you're smart enough to accept the mercy I'm offering." Vincenzo stood. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and we solve this problem permanently." He took Lena's arm and they walked out. In the car, Lena's hands finally started shaking. "You think they'll accept?" "They don't have a choice. Salvatore knows it. His sons will argue, but he'll make them see reason." Vincenzo looked at her. "How do you feel?" "Like I just watched you destroy 3 men without raising your voice." That's how real power works. Violence is the last resort of people who've run out of better options. He took her hand. "You did well. Sitting there, calm, showing them you weren't afraid. It mattered." "I was terrified." "I know, but they didn't see it. That's what counts." He was quiet for a moment. "Lena, what you saw tonight, that's the part of this business most people never see. The part where you win by knowing more than your enemy, by being 3 steps ahead before they even sit down. Violence is easy. This is hard. Is that what you want me to learn? How to be 3 steps ahead? I want you to learn that power isn't about being the strongest or the most ruthless. It's about being the smartest and the most prepared. Everything else is just theater." The Carusos accepted the deal 18 hours later. Their people pulled out of Rome and the attacks stopped. Vincenzo didn't gloat, didn't celebrate, just moved on to the next problem, the next negotiation, the next test of will. And Lena watched him, learning. 2 weeks after the Caruso meeting, Vincenzo called her to his study at midnight. She'd been asleep, but something in Maria's voice when she knocked on the door told Lena this wasn't optional. Vincenzo stood at his window, whiskey in hand, staring at Rome like he was trying to solve it. "We need to talk," he said without turning. Lena's stomach dropped. Those 4 words never meant anything good. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. He turned to face her. You've been here 5 months. In that time, you've learned Italian, learned to shoot, learned my business well enough to sit in on strategy meetings. You've impressed people who are very difficult to impress. You've become someone who matters in this world. Why does that sound like a problem? Because I didn't expect it. He set down his glass. I expected to marry someone I could train and control. Someone who'd be grateful for comfort and security. Someone who'd stay in her lane and not ask complicated questions. Instead, I got you. And that's bad? It's complicated. He moved closer. You're too smart to be content as decoration. Too curious to stay ignorant. Too capable to remain dependent. Which means, at some point, you're going to want more than what this arrangement offers. And I need to know what that looks like before it becomes a problem. Lena's mind raced. What are you asking? I'm asking what you want from this life. From this marriage. From me. His voice was soft. Because 5 months ago, you were a girl I bought to settle a debt. Now you're someone I trust with information that could destroy me. That's not a small change. And I need to know if you're planning to use what you know against me. I'm not... Let me finish. He held up a hand. I'm not accusing you. I'm acknowledging reality. You've learned enough to be dangerous. You have connections now. Adriana, Julia, the women from the salon. You have skills. You have knowledge. If you wanted to destroy me and disappear, you probably could. So I need to know. Is that your plan? Lena stared at this man who'd bought her, trained her, turned her into something she'd never intended to become. And she realized with absolute clarity what the truth was. No, she said. That's not my plan. Then what is? I don't know yet. She moved closer. 5 months ago, I hated you. I hated my father for selling me and you for buying me. I hated this life and this world and everything about what I'd become. But somewhere along the way, that changed. Not all at once, just gradually. Until I realized I wasn't counting days until escape anymore. I was counting victories, learning, growing, becoming someone I didn't recognize but didn't hate. Vincenzo listened without interrupting. I don't love you, Lena continued. I don't even know if I like you, but I respect you. I respect what you've built, and I'm starting to understand why you do what you do. The power of it, the control, the way you move through this world like you own it. She paused. I don't want to destroy you. I want to learn from you, maybe become something like you. That's dangerous. I know. She met his eyes. But it's honest. You wanted to know what I want. That's what I want. To matter. To be someone who has power in my own right. To never be helpless again. Vincenzo studied her for a long moment. Then he did something she had never seen before. He smiled. Actually, smiled. All righty, he said. Then let's make that happen. He moved to his desk, pulled out papers she recognized as marriage documents. Legal papers. Official seals. These are the originals from our wedding. The ones that make you my wife legally but leave you with nothing if something happens to me. He fed them into the shredder. Tomorrow we're going to my lawyer. We're going to draft new documents that give you actual standing, not just as my wife, but as my partner. Access to accounts, authority in the business, a position that means something beyond just wearing my ring. Lena's breath caught. Why? Because you earned it, and because I'm starting to realize that having a wife I actually trust is more valuable than having one I can control. He looked at her. This is a risk for me, Lena. A big one. But you've proven you're worth the risk. What if I betray you? Then you'll have earned that too, and I'll deal with it accordingly. His voice was matter of fact. But I don't think you will. You're too smart to destroy something you're building. He was right, and that realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like freedom. The lawyer's office smelled like old money and older secrets. Sal Moretti had been handling Vincenzo's legal affairs for 30 years, and his face showed every one of them, creased, weathered, sharp eyes that missed nothing. You're sure about this? Sal asked, reading through the documents Vincenzo had requested. These changes give her significant authority, access to accounts, signing privileges. If she wanted to clean you out, she won't. Vincenzo's voice was flat. You don't know that. I know enough. Vincenzo glanced at Lena. Draw up the papers. Full partnership. Equal standing in all business holdings, legitimate and otherwise. Sal's eyebrows climbed. Otherwise? Everything, Sal. Don't make me repeat myself. The old lawyer looked at Lena like she was a bomb waiting to explode. You understand what you're signing into, young lady. This isn't just being a mob wife. This is actual culpability. If he goes down, you go down with him. I understand. Lena's voice was steady. Do you? Because there's no walking away from this. Once your name is on these documents, you're complicit in everything. Every shipment, every payment, every decision that keeps this machine running. The law won't care that you started as a victim. They'll only care that you became a participant. Then I'll be careful not to get caught. She met his eyes. Write the papers. Sal looked at Vincenzo, who nodded. The lawyer sighed and pulled out fresh documents. 3 hours later, Lena signed her name on papers that made her a criminal in ways her marriage never had, made her complicit, made her powerful, made her free in the strangest possible way. On the drive home, Vincenzo was quiet. Finally, he spoke. You could have said no. I know. So why didn't you? Lena watched Rome slide past the window, a city she'd learned to navigate, learned to understand, learned to see as home instead of prison. Because saying no meant staying what I was, decoration, property. Someone who lived in your world but had no power in it. This way, at least I have agency. Even if that agency comes wrapped in felonies. You're not what I expected, Vincenzo said quietly. Good. I wasn't expecting to become this either, but here we are. Here we are. He was quiet for a moment. There's something else we need to discuss. Lena's stomach dropped. What now? Your father. The name hit like cold water. Lena hadn't spoken to him since that hotel room 6 months ago. Hadn't thought about him beyond occasional nightmares where he was signing papers that sold her over and over again. What about him? He's in Rome. Has been for 2 weeks, staying at the same hotel, calling the house daily. Maria's been deflecting, but he's getting persistent. Vincenzo glanced at her. You're going to have to deal with him eventually. I dealt with him. I told him we were done. And he didn't accept that, which is becoming a problem. He showed up at one of our restaurants yesterday, made a scene, started telling anyone who'd listen that I stole his daughter. Vincenzo's voice was flat. It's attracting attention I don't need, so either you handle him or I do. And my version of handling it is permanent. Lena closed her eyes. You'd kill him? He's a liability who knows too much and has nothing to lose. Yes, I'd kill him, but I'd prefer not to, so that leaves you. What am I supposed to do? He won't listen to me. Then make him listen, or make him leave. I don't care which. But this gets resolved this week, one way or another. That night, Lena called her father for the first time in 6 months. He answered on the first ring. Lena? Oh, thank God, Lena, I've been trying to reach you. I know, I'm calling to tell you to stop. Baby, please, just listen to me. I made a mistake. You sold me to pay your debt. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Her voice was ice. And I told you 6 months ago that we were done. I meant it. I'm your father. You stopped being my father the moment you signed those papers. Now you're just someone I used to know who's making problems for me. She took a breath. I'm giving you one chance. Leave Rome. Tonight. Go back to the States, disappear, and never contact me again. Do that, and you get to live. Silence on the other end. Then, he's threatening to kill me? No, I am. The words came out easier than they should have. You know what I've become. You know who I'm married to. And you know that if you keep making noise, keep attracting attention, keep being a problem, something will happen to you. Maybe it'll be Vincenzo's people. Maybe it'll be someone I hire. But it'll happen. So leave, while you still can. You've changed. His voice was hollow. You're not my little girl anymore. Your little girl died in a hotel room in Rome when you traded her for your life. What I am now is someone who learned to survive what you did to me. And someone who's done letting you define her existence. Lena's hand tightened on the phone. Goodbye. Don't call again. She hung up, sat in the dark of Vincenzo's study and tried to feel something about threatening her father's life. Guilt, maybe. Remorse. Instead, she felt relief. The next morning, Maria informed her that her father had checked out of his hotel. Security footage showed him getting into a taxi to the airport at 4 a.m., looking over his shoulder like he expected bullets. "It's done," Maria said quietly. "He's gone." Good. Lena didn't feel the weight she'd expected, just a door closing on a part of her life that had been rotting from the inside. Vincenzo found her in the library that afternoon, reading contracts for a new shipping route. He sat across from her, studying her face. "Your father's gone." "I know. How do you feel?" "Free." She set down the contract. "Is that wrong? Shouldn't I feel guilty or sad or something?" "There's no should when it comes to feelings. You feel what you feel." He leaned back. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. He was never going to stop being a wound. Better to cut it out completely." That's a cold way to think about family. Family is who you choose to keep in your life, not who shares your DNA. His voice was matter of fact. Your father made his choice when he sold you. You made yours when you let him walk away alive. Some people would call that mercy. What would you call it? Practical. Dead bodies attract attention. Disappeared fathers just fade away. He stood. "Speaking of practical matters, I need you to handle something." "What?" "There's a situation with one of our suppliers in Milan. Quality issues, delivery problems, excuses that don't add up. I'd normally handle it myself, but I have a meeting with the council in Naples that I can't reschedule. I want you to go to Milan, assess the situation, and make a decision about whether we continue working with them." Lena's heart hammered. "You want me to handle a business negotiation alone?" "You won't be alone. Marco will be with you. But yes, I want you to make the call. You've learned enough. Time to put it into practice." "What if I make the wrong decision?" "Then you'll learn from it." He moved toward the door. "Lena, at some point, you have to stop being a student and start being a partner. This is that point. Don't overthink it." 2 days later, Lena was on a train to Milan with Marco and a briefcase full of files that represented 6 months of education condensed into one test. The supplier was a man named Luca Rinaldi, who ran a textile business that served as cover for moving higher-value items through customs. He met them at a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, all smiles and apologies. "Signora De Luca, what an honor. Your husband didn't mention he was sending you." "My husband is busy. I'm not." Lena set her briefcase on a table covered in fabric samples. "Let's talk about why your last 3 shipments were short and your excuses keep changing." Luca's smile tightened. "There have been complications. I read the reports. I don't need the cover story. I need the truth." She pulled out a spreadsheet. "You're skimming, taking a percentage off the top and hoping we won't notice. The question is why?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence." Lena's voice went cold. "You owe money to someone. Gambling debts, probably, based on the amounts and timing. You thought you could steal from us to pay them off. What you didn't realize is that we notice everything. So now you have 2 problems instead of 1. Luca's face went white. "Please, I can fix this." "Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're a liability we can't afford." She closed the spreadsheet. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me the name of who you owe money to and exactly how much. Then you're going to make your next 3 shipments completely clean. No skimming, no shortcuts, full value. Do that, and we'll consider paying your debt and keeping you on. Fail, and we'll replace you with someone who understands that stealing from us is a career-ending decision, possibly life-ending, depending on my husband's mood when I make my report." Luca stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Then slowly, he reached for a pen and paper. "His name is Fabio Greco. I owe him 80,000 euros. He's connected to the Milanese families, so you couldn't ask us for help because you were afraid we'd see you as weak. So instead, you stole from us and hoped we'd never notice. That's worse than weak. That's stupid." Lena took the paper. "Marco will verify this information. If it checks out, we'll handle Greco. If you're lying, we'll handle you. Clear?" "Crystal." On the train back to Rome, Marco was quiet for the first half hour. Then he laughed. Actual, genuine laughter. "What?" Lena asked. "You. That was textbook intimidation. Better than some guys I've seen who've been doing this for 20 years. He shook his head. Boss is going to be impressed. I was terrified the entire time. Could have fooled me. Marco leaned back in his seat. You know what you're becoming, right? What? Someone who matters. Someone people fear. That's not a small thing, Signora. Lena watched the Italian countryside blur past and wondered if Marco was right. Wondered if the girl who'd arrived in Rome 7 months ago would recognize what she'd become. Probably not. That girl was dead. Had been dying since the moment her father signed those papers. What sat on this train was someone else entirely. Vincenzo was waiting when she got home. He listened to her report without interrupting, then nodded. Good call. We'll handle Greco, keep Rinaldi on a short leash. He'll be more loyal now that he owes us. He studied her. How did it feel, making that kind of decision? Powerful, terrifying, right. Lena set down her briefcase. I threatened to kill a man today. Or have him killed, same difference. And I didn't hesitate. Does that bother you? It should, shouldn't it? I should feel guilty or wrong or something. She looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Instead, I just feel effective. That's because you're learning the most important lesson. Vincenzo moved closer. Power isn't about feeling good, it's about being effective. The guilt comes later, if at all. And sometimes it never comes, because some people are wired for this, and some people aren't. You're wired for it, whether you like it or not. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. He was quiet for a moment. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen before you react. Lena's stomach dropped. What? I'm 58 years old. I've built an empire that spans continents. I've survived wars, betrayals, attempts on my life by people much smarter than the Carusos. But I'm not immortal, and I'm not getting younger. He moved to the window, that familiar position when he needed to say difficult things. I've been thinking about succession, about what happens to all of this when I'm gone. You're not dying, not yet, but eventually. And when that happens, someone needs to be ready to take over, keep the business running, protect what we've built. He turned to face her. I want that person to be you. The words hung in the air like a grenade. What? I want you to be my heir, not just my wife, my successor, the person who runs this empire when I can't. His voice was calm, matter of fact. You've proven you can learn. You can make hard decisions. You can command respect. Those are the skills that matter. The rest, you'll learn as you go. I'm 20 years old, and I was 22 when I started building this. Age doesn't matter. Capability does. He moved closer. I'm not asking you to take over tomorrow. I'm asking you to prepare, to keep learning, to become someone who can stand in rooms full of wolves and make them defer to you, because that's what this job requires. Lena's mind raced. Why me? Why not Carlo or Sal or because I trust you? Because you're smart enough to see 3 moves ahead, because you're not weighed down by the old ways of doing things. He paused, and because whether you realize it or not, you've already become the kind of person who can do this. You just need to accept it. I don't know if I can. You already are. His voice was soft. You handled Rinaldi. You handled your father. You handled the Carusos by sitting in that room and not flinching. You're already doing the job, Lena. I'm just asking you to prepare to do it alone. She wanted to say no, wanted to run back to being the girl who worked double shifts at a diner and dreamed of community college. But that girl was gone, had been gone for months. If I say yes, she said slowly, what happens? You keep learning. I introduce you to more of the business, the deeper parts, the ones that require absolute discretion. You start making decisions that matter. And eventually, when I'm ready to step back, you step forward. And if I say no, then I find someone else, and you remain my wife with all the privileges that brings. But not my partner, not my heir. Just, he shrugged, someone I care about but can't fully trust with my life's work. The choice was framed perfectly. Accept and become powerful, refuse and remain comfortable but limited. It wasn't really a choice at all. All right, Lena said, teach me everything. Vincenzo's expression shifted, not quite relief, but close. Then we start tomorrow. The next 6 months were an education in darkness. Vincenzo showed her the parts of the business he'd kept hidden. The people who made problems disappear, the politicians who took payments to look the other way, the violence that underpinned everything, kept carefully out of sight but always present. He taught her how to read people, how to spot lies, how to know when someone was planning betrayal before they'd fully formed the thought. He introduced her to allies and enemies, taught her to tell the difference, showed her that sometimes they were the same people depending on the day. And slowly, Lena stopped being someone who was learning to survive and became someone who was learning to rule. The other women noticed. At Adriana's gatherings, they started deferring to her, asking her opinion, treating her like someone who mattered instead of someone's pretty wife. Julia pulled her aside one evening and smiled. "You've bloomed. Adriana said you would, but I wasn't sure. Now I see it. You're becoming dangerous." "Is that good?" "It's necessary. Dangerous women survive. Soft women get destroyed." Julia squeezed her hand. "Your husband is training you to replace him. Don't waste the opportunity." Lena didn't. A year after arriving in Rome, Lena sat in a meeting with Vincenzo's top people and made a suggestion that would shift their entire approach to the Naples territory. Vincenzo listened, considered, then nodded. "Do it." The plan worked. Within 3 months, they doubled their income from Naples without firing a shot. The Carusos, weakened and desperate, came asking for work. Vincenzo let Lena make the call. "No," she said simply. "We don't hire people who've tried to kill us. Find someone else to save your dying business." Vincenzo didn't override her, just smiled and moved on to the next item on the agenda. That night he found her on the balcony of her room, the one she still kept separate from his, a boundary neither had crossed, despite the year they'd spent building something that looked increasingly like partnership. "You did well today," he said. "I know." No false modesty. She'd learned that much. "You're ready." "For what?" "For this." He handed her a folder. Inside were papers transferring majority control of the business to her, making her not just a partner, but the primary decision-maker. "Sign these, and you become the head of this organization. Not in name, we'll keep my name on things for appearances. But in reality, you'll run it. I'll advise, but you'll decide." Lena stared at the papers. "Why now?" "Because you don't need me anymore. You think you do, but you don't. You're capable of running this empire on your own." He was quiet. "And because I'm tired, Lena. I've been doing this for 40 years. I want to step back. Enjoy what I've built instead of constantly defending it, but I can only do that if I know it's in capable hands." "You trust me that much?" "More than anyone I've ever known." His voice was soft. "You were supposed to be a transaction, a debt payment. Instead, you became the most important thing I've ever invested in. Not because of what you were, because of what you became." Lena signed the papers. 2 months later, she's made her first major decision as the actual head of the organization. A rival family in Turin wanted to negotiate territory. Vincenzo advised caution. Lena chose aggression. "We take them out completely," she said in a meeting with their top people. "Not kill them. Just dismantle their operation, absorb what's useful, scatter the rest. Send a message that we're not interested in sharing." "That could start a war," one of the older men objected. "Then we win it." Lena's voice was flat. "We're stronger, smarter, and better organized. They're fractured and desperate. This is the time to strike, not negotiate." She looked at Vincenzo. He said nothing, just watched. "Do it," she said. It took 6 weeks. When it was over, Turin was theirs, the rival family was scattered to the winds, and Lena had proven she could make the hard calls. That night, Vincenzo knocked on her door. She let him in. "You were right," he said, "about Turin. I would have negotiated. You saw the opportunity to destroy them. That was better. You're not upset I didn't listen to your advice?" "I'm impressed you trusted your own judgment more than mine." He studied her. "You've become what I hoped you would. Someone who doesn't need me." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" He smiled, genuine, warm, nothing like the cold calculation she'd seen for so long. "You run the business. You make the decisions. I'm just the old man in the big house now, which is exactly what I wanted." "Then why do you look sad?" "Because you've outgrown me. And that's bittersweet. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, of what you've become, even though I know you hate what it cost. After he left, Lena stood in her room and tried to remember the girl who'd arrived in Rome terrified and sold. Tried to feel some connection to that person. She couldn't. That girl was gone, replaced by someone harder, sharper, more dangerous. Someone who ran a criminal empire and didn't lose sleep over it. Someone who'd learned to survive by becoming the thing she'd feared. 3 years after arriving in Rome, Lena discovered she was pregnant. The doctor confirmed it on a Tuesday afternoon. Lena sat in the medical office, private, discreet, the kind doctors used by people who couldn't risk public records, and tried to process the information. Pregnant, 8 weeks, healthy, unexpected. She told Vincenzo that evening. He was in his study, reading, looked up when she entered. "We need to talk," she said. "That's never good." But he set down his book. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Then, carefully, "Is it mine?" "Of course it's mine." She stopped, realized what he was asking. "Yes, it's yours. Who else would it be?" They'd crossed that final boundary 6 months ago, not out of love. Neither of them had pretended that's what this was, but out of something that looked like partnership, felt like trust, and functioned like intimacy, even if it lacked the traditional emotional framework. "How do you feel about it?" Vincenzo asked. Terrified, confused, not ready. Lena sat down. "We never talked about kids." "No, we didn't." He was quiet. "Do you want this child?" "I don't know. Do you?" "I'm 61 years old. I never expected to be a father. Never wanted it, honestly. Thought my empire would be my legacy." He looked at her. "But if you want this child, I'll support that decision. And if you don't, I'll support that too." Lena put her hand on her stomach, tried to imagine a child, a life she'd be responsible for, someone who'd grow up in this world of violence and secrets. "I want to keep it," she heard herself say. "I don't know why, but I do." "Then we'll keep it." Vincenzo stood, moved to the window. "But Lena, you need to understand what this means. A child makes you vulnerable in ways you've never been before. Every enemy we have will see this baby as leverage, as a target. The danger doesn't just double, it multiplies exponentially." "I know." "Do you? Because I need you to really understand. When this child is born, your life will never be the same. You'll never again be able to make decisions based purely on logic. Every choice will be filtered through whether it keeps this child safe. That's a cage you can't escape." "Everything's a cage," Lena said quietly. "At least this one I'm choosing." The pregnancy changed things in ways Lena hadn't expected. Vincenzo became protective in a way that bordered on obsessive. Security doubled, then tripled. Lena wasn't allowed to travel without a full detail. Wasn't allowed to make public appearances without extensive advance work. "You're suffocating me," she told him 4 months in. "I'm keeping you alive." His voice was flat. "You're carrying my child. That makes you the single most valuable target in Italy. I'm not taking chances. You're also not letting me do my job. Your job right now is to stay alive and healthy." He softened slightly. "After the baby is born, things can go back to normal. But right now, your safety is the priority." Lena hated it. Hated being sidelined. Hated being treated like fragile glass. Hated the reminder that being pregnant made her vulnerable in ways being a woman never had. But she also understood it. Had learned enough about their world to know that Vincenzo wasn't being paranoid. He was being realistic. The baby was born on a cold February morning. A girl. Healthy. Screaming loud enough to wake the dead. Vincenzo held her with the careful precision of someone holding a bomb, and Lena saw something in his face she'd never seen before. Fear. Not of enemies or rivals or the council. Fear of this tiny human who'd changed everything. "What do we name her?" he asked. Lena looked at the child she'd made with a man she'd once hated, in a life she'd never chosen but had learned to command. "Sophia. It means wisdom." "Sophia De Luca." Vincenzo tested the name. "I like it." They brought Sophia home to the palazzo 3 days later. Maria had prepared a nursery that looked like something from a magazine. Guards patrolled the grounds with even more intensity than before. The whole house reorganized itself around this new, fragile life. And Lena discovered that Vincenzo had been right. Having a child changed everything. She couldn't make decisions with the same cold calculation. Couldn't take risks the same way. Couldn't separate business from personal when every choice she made affected the tiny human sleeping in the next room. This was a mistake, she told Adriana over lunch when Sophia was 3 months old. I've made myself weak. You've made yourself human, Adriana corrected. There's a difference. And besides, having a child doesn't make you weak. It makes you more dangerous, because now you have something worth burning the world down to protect. That's supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. Adriana sipped her wine. You think loving someone makes you vulnerable, sometimes, but it also makes you ruthless in ways nothing else can. Wait until someone threatens that child. Then you'll understand what real power feels like. The test came when Sophia was 6 months old. A minor family from Sicily thought they could gain leverage by kidnapping Vincenzo's daughter. They got as far as the palazzo gates before Marco and his team stopped them. 2 dead, 1 captured. Vincenzo brought Lena the news in the nursery where she was putting Sophia down for a nap. It's handled, he said quietly. But we need to discuss next steps. What next steps? Lena's voice was ice. They tried to take my daughter. There are no next steps. There's only ending this. Ending it how? Lena looked at Sophia sleeping peacefully, unaware that people wanted to steal her, hurt her, use her as a weapon. Then she looked at Vincenzo. Find out who ordered it, then destroy them, not just the soldiers they sent, the entire family. I want them gone. That's escalation? I don't care. Her voice was flat, hard, nothing like the girl who'd arrived in Rome 4 years ago. They came after my child. They don't get to walk away from that. They don't get to exist after that. Make them disappear. Vincenzo studied her face. Then he nodded. All right, consider it done. It took 2 weeks. When it was over, the Sicilian family that had tried to take Sophia was scattered, broken, powerless. The ones who survived knew better than to try again. And Lena discovered that Adriana had been right. Having something to protect didn't make her weak. It made her absolutely ruthless. 5 years after arriving in Rome, Lena stood in Vincenzo's study. Their study now, really, and looked at the empire they'd built together. Territories across Europe, legitimate businesses that generated billions, underground operations that generated billions more, an organization that ran with the precision of a Swiss watch. And it was hers. Had been for years, really. Vincenzo had stepped back more and more, content to advise and guide, while Lena made the actual decisions. Do you ever regret it? She asked him one night. Sophia was asleep upstairs, the house was quiet, and they were sharing whiskey like old partners. Buying me. Starting all this. Every day, he said quietly, and never. Both things are true. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. He looked at her. I regret what it cost you, the life you could have had, the choices I took away. But I don't regret who you became, because what you became is extraordinary. A criminal, a queen. His voice was soft. You run an empire. You keep thousands of people employed and protected. You make decisions that affect entire regions. You've become more powerful than I ever was. That's not nothing. It's also not legal. Legality is a construct. Power is real. You have real power, Lena. What you do with it is up to you. She thought about that for a long time, about the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become, about the choices, or lack thereof, that had brought her here, about Sophia sleeping upstairs, innocent and safe because Lena had learned to be dangerous enough to protect her. I want to change things, she said finally. What things? The business. I want to start moving away from the criminal side, invest in legitimate operations, use the money we've made to build something that won't destroy Sophia's future. She met his eyes. I want to create something clean out of all this dirt. Vincenzo was quiet for a long time. Then he smiled. I think that's a good idea. Tell me how. They spent the next year restructuring, moving money into legitimate investments, funding businesses that didn't require laundering or violence, creating foundations that helped people instead of exploiting them. It wasn't perfect. The criminal side didn't disappear, couldn't disappear overnight, without creating a power vacuum that would be worse than what they had. But slowly, carefully, Lena started building something different. Something that looked less like the empire Vincenzo had created and more like what she wanted to leave behind. 7 years after arriving in Rome, Lena sat in a board meeting for one of their legitimate companies, a tech startup they'd funded that was about to go public, and realized she'd come full circle. The girl who'd dreamed of community college was now sitting in a room with venture capitalists and CEOs, making decisions worth millions. The girl who'd been sold to pay a debt now controlled wealth that could buy and sell her father 1,000 times over. The girl who'd been powerless now had more power than she knew what to do with. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like survival. That night, she found Vincenzo in the garden where they'd had breakfast the morning after their wedding. He looked older now, not frail but weathered. 7 years had carved deeper lines into his face. "Do you remember what you told me that first morning?" Lena asked, sitting beside him. "I told you a lot of things. You said I could spend my life crying about being trapped, or I could learn to survive it, maybe even turn it to my advantage." She looked at him. "I did both. I survived, and I turned it into something, but I never stopped feeling trapped. Are you still trapped?" "I don't know anymore. The cage got bigger, more comfortable. But it's still a cage." She paused. "Except now I'm the one holding the keys, and I don't know if that makes me free or just a different kind of prisoner." Vincenzo was quiet for a long time. Then he took her hand, something he rarely did outside of public performances. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to listen without interrupting." Lena's stomach dropped. "What?" "I'm sick, have been for about 6 months. Cancer. Advanced. Treatment isn't working." His voice was calm, matter of fact. "The doctors give me maybe a year, probably less, son." The world tilted. "What?" "I'm dying, Lena, and I need to know that everything we've built will survive me, that Sophia will be protected, that you'll be all right." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you would have tried to fix it, would have spent the last 6 months dragging me to specialists and trying treatments that wouldn't work. I didn't want to spend my remaining time fighting the inevitable." He squeezed her hand. "I wanted to spend it making sure you were ready." "Ready for what?" "For this. Running everything alone, being the power behind the throne, raising Sophia in a world that will be complicated and dangerous no matter how much you legitimize the business." He was quiet. "I want to make sure you understand that you can do this, that you don't need me anymore, that you never really did." Lena felt tears on her face before she realized she was crying. "I did need you. I still do. You don't. You just think you do because I'm the only constant you've had since everything changed." He wiped her tears with his thumb. "But Lena, you've been running this empire for years. I've just been watching and occasionally offering advice. You're already doing the job. Now you just have to do it alone." "I can't." "You can. You will." He pulled her closer. "And when you do, you'll realize that you're stronger than you ever thought possible, because that's what you've always been. Strong enough to survive being sold. Strong enough to turn a cage into a kingdom. Strong enough to raise a daughter in this world and teach her to be better than both of us combined." They sat in the garden as night fell over Rome, holding hands like the partners they'd become, facing the future that was coming whether they were ready or not. Vincenzo died 11 months later, quietly, in his sleep, with Lena holding his hand. The funeral was attended by everyone who mattered in their world. Politicians and criminals, allies and enemies, people who feared the De Luca name, and people who owed everything to it. Lena stood in black, Sophia beside her, and accepted condolences from people she knew were already calculating how to exploit her perceived weakness. They were wrong. She wasn't weak. She was furious. And she spent the next year proving it. Anyone who thought Vincenzo's death meant opportunity learned otherwise. Lena consolidated power with ruthless efficiency, eliminating threats, reinforcing alliances, making it clear that the De Luca Empire was stronger than ever. She also kept pushing the business toward legitimacy, funded more legitimate ventures, created more foundations. built the kind of legacy that Sophia could inherit without drowning in blood. 10 years after arriving in Rome, Lena stood on the balcony of the palazzo and looked out at the city that had become home. Sophia was 8 now, smart and fierce and blessedly unaware of the darker parts of her family's history. Maria found her there, older now, but still sharp. "You have a visitor." "Who?" "Someone from your old life." Lena's stomach dropped. "My father?" "No, someone else. She says her name is Jenny. Says she worked with you at a diner in Iowa." The name hit like a ghost. Jenny, her manager at the diner. The one who'd tried to convince her not to go to Rome, who'd said something felt wrong about the whole situation. Lena found her in the library. Jenny looked older, worn, but her eyes were still kind. "Hi, Lena." Her voice was soft. "I wasn't sure you'd see me. How did you find me?" "Your father. He came back to Cedar Rapids a few years ago, told everyone what happened, that you'd married some Italian millionaire. I didn't believe him until I saw the pictures online. You at charity events, running businesses, looking like you belong in a different world." Jenny moved closer. "I had to see for myself if you were okay." "I'm fine." "Are you?" Jenny's eyes were too sharp. "Because you look like you've been through hell and came out the other side carrying luggage." Lena laughed despite herself. "That's accurate." "What happened to you really happened, not the sanitized version in the press." So Lena told her. Not everything. Some secrets were too dangerous to share, but enough. The debt, the sale, the marriage, the transformation from victim to survivor to something else entirely. Jenny listened without interrupting. When Lena finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Do you regret it?" she finally asked. "If you could go back, would you?" Lena thought about the girl she'd been. Innocent, powerless, dreaming small dreams because that's all she thought she could have. Then she thought about who she'd become, powerful, dangerous, complicated. "I don't know," she said honestly. "The life I have now, it's built on trauma and violence and choices I never wanted to make. But it's also powerful, meaningful. I protect people, I build things. I've created something that matters. The girl I was could never have done that." "So it was worth it, the pain and fear and everything you lost?" "I didn't say that." Lena looked out the window at Rome. "I said I don't know. Some days it feels like the best thing that ever happened to me. Other days it feels like the worst. Both things are true. I don't know if that makes it worth it or just complicated." Jenny stood, moved to the door. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're alive. And I'm glad you found a way to survive what was done to you, even if the survival looks different than anyone expected." After Jenny left, Lena found Sophia in the nursery that had become a playroom. Her daughter looked up from her books. "Mama, who was that lady?" "Someone from before, from a different life." "Did you like that life better?" Lena sat beside her daughter, this child who represented both the cage and the key, both the burden and the purpose. "I liked who I was in that life. Simpler, happier, maybe, but also smaller, weaker, less capable of protecting the things that matter." "Like me?" "Like you." Lena pulled Sophia close. "I wouldn't trade you for anything, even if it meant going back to being that simple girl in Iowa." "Good." Sophia snuggled closer. "Because I like having you as my mama, even if the other kids' parents are weird about it." Paulina smiled. Sophia was already learning that the DeLuca name came with complications, but she was also learning how to navigate them, how to be strong and soft at the same time, how to survive in a world that would test her at every turn, just like Lena had learned. That night, Lena sat in Vincenzo's study, her study now, and looked at the empire she'd inherited and reshaped. It wasn't perfect. It probably never would be. But it was hers, built from the ruins of a bargain she'd never agreed to, forged in darkness, tempered by survival. She thought about the girl who'd stepped off that plane in Rome 10 years ago, terrified, powerless, sold like furniture. That girl was gone, had died in hotel rooms and business meetings in moments of terrible choice. What remained was someone harder, someone who'd learned that survival meant transformation, That cages could become kingdoms if you were strong enough to claim them. That being sold didn't mean staying property. It meant learning to buy yourself back. One choice at a time. One victory at a time. One day at a time. Until the day you woke up and realized you weren't a victim anymore. You were the thing people feared, the power they had to negotiate with, the force they couldn't control. Lena DeLuca had been bought for $8 million to settle a debt. Now she was worth billions and owed nothing to anyone. Some people would call that justice. Others would call it corruption. Transformation. Survival. Lena just called it her life. Imperfect. Complicated. Built on choices she'd never wanted to make but had learned to own. And in the end, ownership was the only power that mattered. She'd been sold once. She'd never be sold again. That was enough. That was